Chapter 2162. Standing at the entrance of the courtyard, Chu Luiyue looked at Hua Shuangshuang speechlessly. It was really close to where she lived. However, in this short distance, these magical beasts came to entangle him again. A few of them were still hanging on Hua Shuangshuang's body. Shuangshuang, why do I feel like they like you more than before? At first, she thought she was wrong, but after 2 days of observation, she realized that she was right. These divine beasts, no matter what species they were or what temperament they had, all of them liked to stick to him when they met him. She wondered what kind of mysterious constitution he had. Hua Shuangshuang laughed. Don't worry, they are very obedient. They won't cause trouble. As he spoke, he pulled the few of them off his body and put them on the ground. He turned around and said, "Okay, stay here. Don't go in and cause trouble." Chu Luiyue smiled. Shuangshuang, don't worry. They dare to cause trouble anywhere in the Yu residence, but not here. Hua Shuangshuang quickly understood. Because of little Dumpling? Dumpling was now a crimson gold celestial phoenix and a young master with the purest bloodline. She could be considered the most noble existence. When these demonic beasts saw her, they naturally felt a kind of reverence from the depths of their bones. Chu Luiyue smiled and nodded, then walked inside. Dumpling should already know that you are here, but I asked her to take care of Zichen, so she has been staying here. She must be very happy to see you. Zichen? Hua Shuangshuang was stunned for a moment, then understood. Is that your other contracted magical beast? Hua Shuangshuang had heard that Chu Luiyue had 2 divine beasts. Yes. Hua Shuangshuang sighed. I heard that it is a legendary 3-eyed eagle with the bloodline of the great phoenix dragon. It must be very extraordinary. As Chu Luiyue walked in, she raised her voice and shouted. Dumpling. Look who is here. At that moment, Dumpling was about to change Zichen's bandages. When she heard the noise, her eyes lit up and she looked outside excitedly. Zichen looked up at her and reached out his hand. Give me the medicine. Dumpling retracted her gaze and avoided his hand. How can that be? You haven't recovered yet, so I'll have to do it. Zichen looked at her calmly. It's rare for friends to meet, and since you're already here, there's no reason to not meet. That's right. Dumpling thought about it and suddenly felt that Zichen's words made sense. She put the medicine aside and asked eagerly, Then why don't I go take a look first? Then I'll come back and help you change your bandages? Zichen nodded. Go ahead. I knew Zichen was the best. Dumpling immediately jumped up in joy. She turned around and ran out barefoot. In the blink of an eye, her small figure disappeared from the room. Only the crisp sound of a bell could be heard faintly. Zichen closed his eyes and planned to rest. Then, Dumpling's excited screams came clearly from outside. Das Wang. Zichen opened his eyes. Dumpling ran out and saw Hua Shuangshuang. She was excited. Das Wang. It's really you. It's really you. When Hua Shuangshuang saw Dumpling, she was stunned at first. Then she remembered that she had now transformed into a human. Although she looked completely different from before, and even her bloodline had changed, her aura was still very familiar. He immediately broke into a big smile and opened his arms. Little Jiao. He picked up Dumpling and weighed her in his arms. Look at me, I was so excited to see you that I forgot that you're not called Little Jiao anymore, but Dumpling. Among the 13 Yu guards, he was the closest to Dumpling. He was used to calling her Little Jiao, and it was hard for him to change it. Dumpling giggled. It's okay. You can call me whatever you want. Hua Shuangshuang laughed and looked at her carefully. Little Jiao, did you miss me? Within the room, a wisp of irritation flashed through Zichen's eyes. He couldn't sleep anymore. He lifted the blanket, got out of bed, and walked to the door. When he arrived at the door, he saw Dumpling hugging Hua Shuangshuang's neck and nodding. Yes, yes. Chu Luiyue saw Zichen first and said in surprise. Zichen, why did you come out? Zichen looked indifferent. There's no reason to lie down all the time when there's a guest. Besides, my injuries are almost healed. As he spoke, he looked at Hua Shuangshuang. This is Zichen. Dumpling turned around and waved at Zichen excitedly. Let me introduce you. This is Da Huang. He used to be my underling. Chu Luiyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Dumpling, how long ago was that? Besides, Shuangshuang used to let you have your way. Hua Shuangshuang laughed even more happily. Master, don't worry. Little Jiao is right. I did follow little Jiao a few years ago. Dumpling made a face proudly. Chu Luiyue smiled helplessly. You're the only one who spoils her. In the past few years, the two of them had caused a lot of trouble for the demonic beasts in Tianling Imperial City. Dumpling said again. Da Huang, this is Zichen. He got injured because he tried to save me. Hua Shuangshuang suddenly understood. I see. Dumpling patted his shoulder. Okay. I have to go back and change Zichen's bandages. I'll come find you when I'm done. Hua Shuangshuang put Dumpling down and saluted Zichen. Thank you for taking care of little Jiao. Zichen said indifferently. It's my pleasure. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2163. Hua Shuangshuang was stunned for a moment. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt that Zichen didn't seem to welcome her very much. Dumpling ran to Zichen's side and looked up at him. Zichen, did I wake you up just now? She remembered that Zichen was going to rest. Zichen glanced at her. No. After pausing for a moment, he casually added another sentence. Maybe it's because the wound is recovering, so I can't sleep. That's true. Tuanzi thought of her injury. Every time it was time for the scab to form, the wound would feel itchy and uncomfortable. Zichen probably felt the same way. But this also means that you're almost recovered. Let's go, I'll help you change the dressing. It was always right to change the dressing and clean it up. Zichen raised his eyes and looked at Hua Shuangshuang. This isn't appropriate, is it? You haven't seen your friends for a long time. Your injury is more important now. Dumpling still knew what was important at this critical moment. Chu Luiyue also said, Dumpling is right. You should take care of your body first. I brought Shuangshuang here today to say hello to Dumpling. Zichen's eyes moved slightly. He nodded and turned back. Chu Luiyue looked at Hua Shuangshuang. Zichen was injured while saving Dumpling. Dumpling has been feeling very guilty, so I asked her to stay here to take care of Zichen. Hua Shuangshuang nodded. Dumpling is pure and kind. She must be very sad about this. This is a good thing for her. Chu Luiyue smiled slightly. Zichen's blood is very powerful. He should be able to recover soon. When the time comes, I'll send Dumpling to find you. Hua Shuangshuang laughed. There's no hurry. Anyway, I'm relieved to see that she's fine today. Chu Luiyue raised his voice and said, Dumpling, Zichen, we won't disturb you anymore. We'll leave first. Zichen had just laid down. Dumpling was holding the medicine bottle in her hand. She turned her head and responded. Okay. Chu Luiyue and Hua Shuangshuang quickly left. Dumpling put the medicine bottle down and untied the bow around Zi's wrist. Zichen looked down at her. After a moment, he asked, Actually, my injuries are almost healed. Why don't I go and tell Master? Dumpling shook her head like a rattle. No. You say 10 days, not a day. She removed the gauze and saw that Zichen's wound had indeed begun to scab. It was just that the wound was too large, so it still looked ghastly. Shuangshuang frowned slightly. Then, she carefully applied the medicine and changed the gauze to a clean one. Zichen didn't say anything else. He leaned against the headboard and his eyebrows relaxed a little. Then, he heard Dumpling mumbling to herself, Anyway, Das Wang will be staying in Peach Blossom Dock from now on. It won't be too late to find him later. Zichen looked at her again. Dumpling seemed to sense his gaze. She raised her head and blinked a few times. What's wrong? Zichen, are you in a bad mood again? No. Yes. As Tuanzi spoke, she leaned forward and reached out her small hand to poke at the corner of his lips. You're not smiling. Zichen grabbed her hand, paused for a moment, and said, It's just that the wound hurts a little. Dumpling immediately understood. Then, she felt guilty. Was I too rough just now? Then I'll be more careful, Zichen replied with a Then, he let go of her hand and closed his eyes gently. Dumpling lowered her head and treated the wound more carefully. Chu Luiyue, who had just walked out of the courtyard, heard this and looked back with a strange expression. Was she hallucinating? Did Zichen just say that the wound hurts a little? Was there a mistake? This man was a tough guy who wouldn't cry out even if he was smashed to pieces. The wound had healed a lot. Why would he cry out in pain? Hua Shuangshuang also stopped and followed Chu Luiyue's gaze. Master, what's wrong? He didn't know Zichen, so he naturally didn't notice anything wrong. Chu Luiyue shook her head. Nothing. Let's go. There are more and more strange things happening recently. After walking for a while, Hua Shuangshuang opened her mouth. Master, Zichen, he doesn't seem to welcome me. How can that be? Chu Luiyue smiled. Zichen has always been cold to everyone. You don't have to worry about it. Hua Shuangshuang was relieved. That's good. He had a special physique and had a strong affinity with all kinds of magical beasts. Only when he met Zichen did he feel that something was wrong. He was probably wrong. After parting with Hua Shuangshuang, Chu Luiyue returned to her courtyard. Rong Xiu was writing a list for Yanqing. That's all for now. You must send it here within 5 days. Yanqing took the list with both hands and quickly put it away. Yes. Then, he respectfully retreated. When he came out, he bumped into Chu Luiyue. He bowed and left in a hurry. Chu Luiyue looked at his back and asked curiously, What did you do for him? What did you ask him to do? Why are you in such a hurry? Nothing. He just went back to the Yuntian Tower to get some things. Rong Xiu smiled faintly. They are all things that Senior Tang Ku wants. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. Why didn't Senior Tang Ku tell me what he needs? Doesn't Peach Blossom Dock have any? Rong Xiu said, He just came here. He came just now. You weren't here, so I agreed. He just needs some materials for refining. Peach Blossom Dock has some, but not many. Yuntian Tower happened to have some in stock, so I asked Yanqing to get them. I see. Tang Ku was a blacksmith. Of course, he needed things related to refining. Although Peach Blossom Dock was rich in energy, it was still inferior to the Yuntian Tower in terms of materials. Chu Luiyue touched his chin. In that case, should I prepare some for Mr. Su? That's not necessary. Senior Tang Ku already asked for them for Mr. Su. After all, both of them were blacksmithing saints and had fought with each other before. No one knew each other better than they did in this regard. Chu Luiyue clicked his tongue. Senior Tang Ku is really something. He had just turned her into his wife, and now he was chasing after her. Su Li had not seen him for the past 2 days, but he had come up with such a plan. Even Chu Luiyue had to admit that she was impressed. Rong Xiu's thin lips curved up as he looked at her. Senior Tang Ku is planning to make some supremacy divine artifacts. Speaking of this, Chu Luiyue furrowed her brows. Making a supremacy divine artifact was not a problem for Tang Ku. More importantly, what about the divine artifacts? According to Su Li, they were able to make 10 divine artifacts because of the sudden appearance of the armillary shield. But now, it was probably impossible to refine a sacred artifact. Suddenly, she thought of something. By the way, do you remember Senior Tang Ku said that Taizu is very likely to become a blacksmith saint? The Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2164. Rong Xiu nodded. He did say that. This sentence was said in front of everyone at that time, and it was precisely because of this that Shangguan Jing's reputation in the Divine Ruins world was also great. Everyone was secretly watching to see if he could really successfully break through to become a refining saint. Chu Luyue hesitated for a moment and briefly repeated what Su Li had said before. If what Mr. Su said is true, there should be no one in the current Divine Ruins world who can successfully refine a sacred artifact. Then what Mr. Tang Ke said, in a sense, has become an unachievable expectation. Rong Xiu's eyes moved slightly. Mr. Su said that to you? Chu Luyue nodded. Rong Xiu paused for a moment and smiled. Then she probably misunderstood something. Chu Luyue was stunned. Senior Tang Ku also mentioned this to me before, but his statement is a little different from Mr. Su's. Do you still remember the pavilion in the air that appeared in the Red Moon Desert before? Of course Chu Luyue remembered. Everything that happened there could be said to be vivid in her mind. Then, what's the problem? Rong Xiu stretched out his hand and made a gesture. Chu Luyue instantly realized something. You mean that square? Rong Xiu nodded. Obviously, the celestial shield came from there. Since the appearance of the celestial shield back then could prompt Senior Tang Ku to refine the 10 great sacred artifacts, then the rest might not be impossible. At that time, Senior Tang Ku also said that there was a power of the same origin as the celestial shield in that square. Perhaps, that was the secret of the sacred artifact. Chu Luyue was stunned for a long time, and a huge storm was set off in her heart. Yes. No one knew better than her that the Black Jade Square was indeed closely related to the celestial shield. In that case, in the world, there is still a chance to refine a sacred artifact? Rong Xiu smiled and looked outside. In theory, yes. However, I'm afraid it's still extremely difficult to achieve. Chu Luyue fell into deep thought. Although Tang Ku and Mr. Su's level in refining was comparable, in many other things, Tang Ku was obviously more experienced and far-sighted, and could make more accurate judgments. Su Li had been in a deep sleep for 10,000 years, so it was normal that she did not know anything about the world. Since Tang Ku said so, there must be a reason. If it was really because the Armillary Heaven shield was peeled off from the Black Jade Square that gave birth to the 10 great sacred artifacts, then, there might be an even more astonishing power stored in the Black Jade Square? That's not an illusion. Chu Luyue said firmly. It must really exist. Yan Qing left Peach Blossom Dock and went straight to the Yuntian Tower. However, just as he was about to reach the Yuntian Tower, he suddenly changed direction and arrived in front of a door. The Yuntian Tower guarded 3 door realms, and the one that Yan Qing came to was the most confidential. In the entire Yuntian Tower, there were very few people who had the right to enter and leave. A guard in black armor was in charge of guarding the door. When he saw Yan Qing, he immediately bowed respectfully. Greetings, Lord Yan Qing. Yan Qing nodded. I'm going out for a while. Yes. The guard did not ask any questions and let Yan Qing pass. The ripples shook, and Yan Qing's figure disappeared behind the door. Country Yaochen. As night fell, the originally noisy streets gradually became deserted. Shops of all sizes on both sides of the street also closed for business. Yan Ge locked the door and hummed a tune as he leisurely returned to his residence. However, just as he returned to his bedroom, he immediately sensed that something was wrong. Who is it? He spoke with extreme vigilance. A figure walked out of the darkness, and a handsome face gradually appeared. When he saw the person's face clearly, Yan Gu instantly heaved a sigh of relief and patted his chest. Yan Qing, are you trying to scare me to death? He was still wondering who it was. Master has orders. When Yan Qing spoke, Yan Ji's expression immediately turned serious. What is it? Yan Qing took out a list and handed it over. It was the list that Rong Xiao had given him previously. This is what master wants. Go back and get it as soon as possible. Yan Gu received it with both hands respectfully. After looking at it carefully, he looked at Yan Qing in surprise. These are all top-notch goods. Why does master suddenly want so much? Yan Qing's expression was cold. Master's intentions are not something that you and I can guess. Yan Gu snorted. You have been by master's side for the longest time. You have already guessed countless times. What's wrong with me guessing once? You have 3 days. Yan Qing could not be bothered to talk nonsense. If you are late, don't worry. 3 days is more than enough. Yan Gu kept the list and raised his eyebrows proudly. Leave this to me. I guarantee that there will be no problem. Master said that once this deal is over, you don't have to stay in Yaochen anymore. Yan Qing's words immediately shocked Yan Gu. Really? Yan Qing nodded. Master means that it is time for you to go back. Yan Gu slapped his thigh. He was so emotional that tears flowed down his face. I have waited for this day for so long. Only God knew that he had been bored to death after staying here for so many years. Master had finally spoken. He was so emotional. Boo-hoo. Yan Qing's expression was still cold, but he did not hide the disdain in his eyes. Yan Gu did not care about this. After all, Yan Qing had been like an iceberg for so many years. He happily leaned forward and asked, "What's the matter?" Then. Master should be going back soon, right? Where is Madam? She should be with you, right? Yan Qing took half a step back and turned to leave. Just wait over there. I will come back to collect the items 3 days later at the same time. With that, the air vibrated, and his figure disappeared from the room. Hey! Don't go. Finish what you were saying. Yan Gu shouted twice. However, Yan Qing left quickly and did not even look at him. Really? With this temper, he will not be able to find a wife in the future. Yan Gu snorted. Then, he remembered what he had just said and became happy again. He had been waiting for this day for so long that his wrinkles had increased by quite a few. Now, he was no longer in the mood to sleep. He simply packed up and set off quickly. After Wei Zhe left Qinggu Slope, he went straight to Peach Blossom Cove. Of course, this time, he brought Wei Shiping with him. Father, what do you think Rong Xiao is planning? Wei Shiping's voice came from the universe ring. He sounded nervous and doubtful. Wei Zhe shook his head. I don't know either. Rong Xiao was very scheming. He could not see anything. But now that Peach Blossom Cove and Yintian Tower have joined forces, their forces are growing stronger day by day. It is not easy to provoke them. He should have other plans. After all, if he really wanted to kill you, he would have done it long ago. He would not have waited until now. Before he could finish, a gust of cold air came. Wei Zhe stood still and looked in front of him in shock. Who is it? Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2165. Wei Zhe, how dare you? A cold and lazy voice sounded. Wei Zhe was shocked. Jun Jiuqing? He knew that something was wrong and turned to run. However, he found that he couldn't move. The space around him had been frozen. Looking at the faint light in the surrounding space, Wei Zhe became more and more nervous. This was Jun Jiuqing's god domain. He quickly mobilized the force in his body and summoned his god domain at the same time, wanting to fight against it. However, what shocked him even more was that he was suppressed by Jun Jiuqing's god domain and couldn't summon his god domain. The importance of a god domain in a fight between god-level experts was self-evident. Once one side had the upper hand in this aspect, the victory was basically locked in. It was the same now. Wei Zhe's heart was filled with panic. He knew that Jun Jiuqing was very strong, but he didn't expect him to be so strong. Such a god domain pressure could effortlessly crush him. Jun Jiuqing's figure slowly appeared. He looked at Wei Zhe with a lazy expression, but his eyes were extremely cold as he said slowly, "Don't worry." He said slowly, "It seems that you've forgotten what I said earlier." Wei Zhe wanted to defend himself, but the moment he met Jun Jiuqing's gaze, he knew that Jun Jiuqing must know everything. His throat tightened, and his heart beat violently. The wound on his arm seemed to hurt again. I was forced to do it. Wei Zhe didn't want to fight Jun Jiuqing head-on. That was tantamount to courting death. His mind spun wildly, searching for all kinds of reasons. Rong Xiu and Rong Xiu know about the Mahayana sect. If I don't do as he says, he will make this matter public. At that time, my whole family Wei and I will suffer a huge blow. Jun Jiuqing suddenly laughed, his expression mocking and contemptuous. The only one who will be criticized is yourself. So what if you have a family Wei? After all, you've been keeping this from the family Wei from beginning to end. You're just worried that you'll be banished by the family Wei once this matter is exposed. Wei Zhe's face turned pale, and the rest of his words were stuck in his throat. Jun Jiuqing was right. This was what he was most worried about. Arranging informants in the Mahayana sect was not a big deal in itself. But more importantly, that person had attacked Chu Luiyue. This could be considered a big trouble, and even provoked other aristocratic families because of it. Once everyone knew that he was the mastermind, they would definitely launch a crusade against the family Wei. When the time came, the family Wei and the others would most likely push him out to protect themselves. Then he would really be alone and helpless. So after weighing the pros and cons, he could only compromise with Rong Xiu. I warned you back then not to get involved in this mess. You didn't listen, so who can you blame? Jun Jiuqing stretched out his hand. Give me that thing. What he wanted was the hammer. Wei Zhe instinctively chose to refuse. No. What are you trying to do? Wei Shiping was still in there. He did not dare to think about the consequences of falling into Jun Jiuqing's hands under such circumstances. Jun Jiuqing's lips curled into a sinister smile, but his voice was unquestionable. I'll say it one last time. Give it to me. Wei Zhe was deeply conflicted. This thing originally belonged to Jun Jiuqing. If it had been before, Wei Zhe would have agreed to it without a second thought. But it was different now. He was very worried about what Jun Jiuqing would do. Family I was just confused. Please let me go this time. I promise. Jun Jiuqing's patience had run out. He gently raised his hand, and the surrounding space instantly began to crumble. A terrifyingly powerful aura covered the sky. In an instant, several bloody wounds appeared on Wei Zhe's body. Screech! The half-folded divine vulture suddenly appeared. The thick smell of blood made it very excited. Its bloodthirsty eyes stared fixedly at Wei Zhe. Wei Zhe's heart skipped a beat. In the next instant, the half-folded divine vulture pounced on him. Chi! Almost at the same time, an extremely sharp aura flew over. Wei Zhe felt a chill on his wrist. When he looked down, he realized that Jun Jiuqing had cut off his hand without hesitation. Then, intense pain shot through his body. However, Wei Zhe could no longer care about himself. He could only look ahead in horror. His hand was crushed by a terrifying aura in midair and instantly exploded. The interspatial ring on top of his hand flew to Jun Jiuqing. Jun Jiuqing raised his hand. He did not touch the blood-stained interspatial ring. Instead, he pointed at it. Bang! The interspatial ring shattered. Everything that had been stored inside flew out. That included the iron hammer. Jun Jiuqing put it away. Then, without even looking at it, he waved his sleeves and burned the rest of the items to ashes. Jun Jiuqing. You, Wei Zhe panicked when he saw that Wei Shiping had fallen into Jun Jiuqing's hands. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the half-folded divine vulture pounced. Although Wei Zhe was quite powerful, he had already been injured. Now, his mind was in a mess and he had basically lost his ability to fight. The half-folded divine vulture did not waste too much time killing him. Jun Juqing glanced over indifferently. A cold smile appeared on his lips. The flesh of a god-level expert tastes better after all. Screech. The half-folded divine vulture screeched. Wei Zai's voice gradually became softer. Jun Juqing said indifferently. Wei Shiping, do you see that? This is what you get for having disloyal thoughts. Remember, your father died because of you. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2166. Peach Blossom Cove. Chu Luiyue was cultivating in her room. A silver Xian formation was quietly floating in front of her. The Xian formation was incomparably complicated and dazzling. Unfortunately, it wasn't complete and there were a few areas that seemed to be incomplete. Chu Luiyue had already stared at it for a long time and her brows were slightly knitted. No. It's not like this. This incomplete Xian formation was the Sky Shuttle formation. Chu Luiyue relied on her memory and barely sketched out the rough outline. However, because she wasn't strong enough, she couldn't display its complete appearance. When she was at Lingxiao College, she repaired the Sky Shuttle formation with Dabao's help. If she wanted to use it completely, it would be much more difficult. After Chu Luiyue returned from the Red Moon Desert, she studied the Sky Shuttle formation whenever she had time. Unfortunately, she didn't make much progress. Recalling the scene of Rong Xiu effortlessly using the Sky Shuttle formation, Chu Luiyue felt a headache coming on. The gap between two people was simply too great. She felt that Rong Xiu didn't spend much time on cultivation, but his strength in all aspects had been increasing at an astonishing speed. Every time she thought that their strength should be close, Rong Xiu would always display an even more shocking level. It was only in front of him that Chu Luiyue experienced what was called frustration. You, little you, A familiar voice sounded. Chu Luiyue waved her hand and dispersed the Xian formation in front of her. She stood up and walked outside. Mr. Su? Why are you here? Su Li took a step forward and looked a little embarrassed. Little you, I'm here to ask you for a favor. Chu Luiyue asked curiously, what favor? Just say it. Su Li bit her lips and said, I need some materials for refining. Do you have any here? Chu Luiyue was stunned. Su Li explained, it's like this, Tang Ku seems to be preparing to refine tools recently, and I also want to. But I'm lacking some things, so I wonder if you have any? Chu Luiyue was even more puzzled. Senior Tang Ku asked for it from Rong Xiu before, and also asked for one for you. Don't you know? Su Li was stunned. Really? Of course. I saw it with my own eyes that day. As Chu Luiyue spoke, he suddenly thought of something and the corner of his mouth twitched. So, Senior Tang Ku hasn't told you? Su Li shook her head. Chu Luiyue suddenly felt as if he had accidentally done something wrong. So, Tang Ku didn't say it on purpose and planned to give it to Su Li as a gift? Chu Luiyue coughed and asked awkwardly, Mr. Su, can you pretend that you don't know about this? Su Li was speechless. As intelligent as she was, she had also guessed something at this moment, and her face reddened. I only know that he is preparing to refine a weapon, but I don't know about this. It just so happened that she had just recovered her physical body and broken through to the high god level, so she was itching for a fight. She had planned to ask Chu Luiyue for some materials so that she could find an opportunity to have a good competition with Tang Ku, but who knew? Chu Luiyue sized her up and asked, Senior Tang Ku seems to have a big lineup this time. Yes. He plans to start refining weapons in returning Dragon Stream tomorrow. It seems that Shangguan Jing and the others will also be there. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. It was the dream of countless weapon refiners to be able to see someone like Tang Ku refine a weapon with their own eyes. Of course, they wouldn't miss this opportunity. It seemed that she would have to go and see it when the time came. Don't worry, Senior Tang Ku has always been thinking about you. You don't have to worry about the refining materials, Chu Luiyue said, and then thought of the conversation with Rong Xiu before. By the way, there's something. she briefly repeated the matter to Su Li. After hearing it, Su Li's face was also filled with shock. Really? If that's the case, then, is it really possible to refine a new sacred artifact in this world? Chu Luiyue shook her head. It's hard to say. After all, on the Black Jade Plaza, only this armillary shield fell off. Even if it still contains the power to refine a sacred artifact, it probably can't be used by humans. Otherwise, the Divine Ruins world wouldn't have made any progress in this aspect for the past 10,000 years. That's true. Su Li seemed to be deep in thought. Suddenly, she thought of something and asked, since that's the case, then, if we go to that place again, wouldn't there be a chance? Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. To tell you the truth, I have the same plan. Since the armillary heaven shield came from above, then the Black Jade Square must exist, including the palace. It must be real. It was just that she didn't know where that place was or where she had to go to find it. There didn't seem to be such an existence in the Divine Ruins world. She had always felt that Biyao and the others should know something, but she hadn't had the time to inquire about it yet. Perhaps, it was time to find some time to ask. Soon, it was the second day. Early in the morning, many people in Peach Blossom Dock City came out of their homes and rushed in the same direction. They had already heard that Tang Ku was planning to refine artifacts at Qingshui Cliff today, so they were all in high spirits and wanted to see the elegance of a weapon-refining saint. Even if they could only take a few glances from afar, they would have no regrets. The people from the 13U also planned to join in the fun. Yujio hugged the wooden sword and went to Tsinyi's side with an eager face. Big brother, I heard that Senior Tang Ku is not only refining one divine artifact this time. If possible, can I ask Senior Tang Ku to use the leftover materials to refine a sword for me? Or, Mr. Su can do it too. Mr. Su was also a weapon-refining saint anyway, and because of Chu Luiyue, he was very good to the 13U. She should be willing to help him with this. Tsinyi glanced at him indifferently. Isn't your sword still fine? How is it fine? Yujio immediately pulled out the wooden sword from his arms, his face full of indignation. There are cracks on it. With a flick of his wrist, Tsinyi took out a new wooden sword and handed it over. Then changed to this. Yujio, he really didn't want to use this lousy wooden sword anymore. Tsinyi looked up slightly. You don't want it? Yes. I really want it. Yujio forced a smile on his face and took the wooden sword with both hands. Thank you, big brother. Tsinyi nodded. If it's not enough, I have more here. Yujio wanted to cry. Big brother is so good to me. Thank you, big brother. Little Hachi and Shifang also walked over. Where's 13? I didn't see him after looking around. He's been running around Qingshui Cliff these days. A look of understanding suddenly appeared on their faces. So he had already gone there. Second brother isn't here either. He seems to have gone to tame beasts again. Shifang said. Everyone had already gotten used to this. Hua Shuangshuang had spent more time with the demonic beasts than with them. Tsinyi took the lead and walked forward. The rest of the group followed suit. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2167. When they arrived at Qingshui Cliff, there were already quite a few people there. Most people didn't dare to get close. Those who could come close were all from the U residence. Sanson and Shirsan were already waiting there. Yo, why didn't third brother stay at the U residence to tinker with the abacus today? Little Hachi blinked and teased. Sanson chuckled. This is a rare opportunity. Shouldn't you come and take a look? Little Hachi giggled. Don't we know you? Isn't it because your little treasure vault is hidden under Qingshui Cliff? Are you worried that Senior Tang Ku's artifact refinement will cause too much of a commotion? Sanson coughed and hurriedly said, Shoo. Lower your voice. It won't be good if Senior Tang Ku hears. That's not a little treasure vault. That's a big one. Although he knew that with Tang Ku's strength, it was unlikely that he would lose control. But there was always a possibility, right? He would feel more at ease if he came over to watch. Little Hachi tucked her hair behind her ears and raised her chin. There, Senior Tang Ku is behind us. Sanson immediately looked back guiltily, but he didn't see Tang Ku's figure. Only then did he realize that little Hachi was joking. You're joking about your third brother again. Little Hachi pinched his chubby cheeks and smiled. Third brother has the best temper, ah. Sanson pulled her hand down. Speak properly. Don't get touchy. What will happen if others see? Although he said that, there wasn't a hint of anger on his face. There was only helpless doting. Little Hachi giggled. The people from the 13th U residence didn't have any temper with little Hachi. Other than Sun Yi, who could suppress her, the others couldn't do anything about her and could only dote on her. At this moment, a figure suddenly flitted past the corner of her eye. Little Hachi raised her eyebrows in surprise and muttered, "Didn't he leave a few days ago?" Sanson turned around. "You mean Yan Qin? He came back last night. I heard that the things that Senior Tang Ku needed this time were all brought back by him from the Yuntian Tower." "Hey, that's not right. How did you know he left a few days ago?" Sanson looked at little Hachi strangely. She usually didn't seem to care about these things. Little Hachi crossed her arms and snorted. The Yu estate is only so big and there are only so many people. What's so strange about knowing all this? That's true. Sanson didn't think too much about it. Don't worry, if there's any treasure later, I'll definitely give it to you first. Little Hachi's eyebrows relaxed. Thank you, third brother. She was born enchanting and beautiful. Just by standing there, without even saying a word, she would automatically attract everyone's attention. There were already quite a few gazes in their direction. However, little Hachi was already immune to this kind of gaze, so she didn't take it to heart. Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu came with Tang Ku and Su Li. Seeing Su Li's appearance, the crowd became restless again. That's Mr. Su, right? I heard that his strength is similar to Senior Tang Ku's. What are his plans today? The two of them are husband and wife. What's so strange about them coming together? That's right, I almost forgot about that. The main thing is that Mr. Su is a woman. It will take some time for him to accept it, everyone was discussing. Su Li thought that she would be angry when she heard this, but she realized that she wasn't. She only felt her face heat up. She thought about it and didn't know what to say. She glanced over and saw that Tang Ku seemed to be smiling. She snorted in her heart. I must win against him later. I'll let him know how powerful I am. The few of them came to Qingshui Cliff. After a simple greeting, Tang Ku decided to start refining. Everyone quietened down and waited nervously. Red Moon Desert. Under the lake. Lan Xiao conjured a mirror in his hand and admired his face from all angles. He was satisfied. TSK. How beautiful. Bang. Along with this crisp sound, the mirror in his hands suddenly shattered. Lan Xiao immediately let go and flashed to the side. Big Bao. What are you doing? Dugu Mabao sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and said word by word, You're disturbing my rest. Lan Xiao pointed at him with a trembling finger. You didn't even open your eyes. How can I affect you by looking in the mirror? Dugu Mabao's tone was as calm as usual. You're noisy. I think so too. Diwu Zhangza added, Lan Xiao, there are 24 hours in a day, and you're looking in the mirror for 11 hours. The remaining 2 hours are spent praising yourself. It's fine if it's just 1 or 2 days, but it's been so long. Lan Xiao, aren't you tired? What's so tiring about this? I've reconstructed my divine body now. Lan Xiao snorted. Don't forget that you helped me reconstruct my appearance. He didn't care what they thought. He liked it anyway. Sigh, you guys can't have this kind of trouble anymore. Lan Xiao lay down, rested his head on his arms, and crossed his legs. When Diwu reconstructs his divine body, we can think of a way to get out of this damned place. Speaking of this, Dugu Mabao suddenly opened his eyes. It's not time yet. Of course, I know. Before Lan Shao could finish his sentence, he suddenly felt the ground shake violently. Everyone's expression changed. What's wrong? Diwu Zhangzi frowned and asked. Is it Wei Yu again? How long has it been? Dugu Mabao quickly got up and looked up. It's not Wei Yu. He slowly clenched his fists. That thing is here. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2168. Peach Blossom Dock. Above Qingshui Cliff, Tang Ku stood in midair. He looked at Su Li and smiled. Lizzie, we didn't decide the winner last time. Why don't we do it again today? Su Li had planned to do so, but she didn't expect Tang Ku to suggest it. Her eyes lit up. Sure. Hearing this, the surrounding crowd immediately boiled over. The two of them are going to compete again? I heard that the two of them refined 5 divine artifacts each 10,000 years ago. I wonder if it will happen again this time. I don't want 5 or 10. As long as I can witness the birth of a divine artifact, I will have no regrets in my life. I wonder who will win this time. To be fair, let's use the same thing. Tang Ku said and handed over a universe ring. I borrowed this from the saint. One for me and one for you. Su Li had heard about this from Chu Luiyue, so she wasn't surprised by Tang Ku's behavior. But when she looked up and saw the joy in Tang Ku's eyes, she remembered that Chu Luiyue had asked her to pretend that she didn't know. She raised her eyebrows slightly and showed a surprised expression. Is there mine too? Tang Ku smiled and raised his chin. See if you like it. Su Li was also curious. She separated a part of her consciousness and looked into the universe ring. Her heart skipped a beat. She looked up at Tang Ku in shock. Her beautiful eyes were full of disbelief. This time, she wasn't pretending. She was really shocked. Seeing her reaction, Tang Ku was delighted, and the smile on his face became wider. How is it? Do you like it? Su Li's lips moved. She was full of excitement. She looked at the universe ring in her hand and couldn't bear to put it down. The joy in her eyes was almost overflowing. I like it. She exclaimed simply and straightforwardly. The refining materials in the ring were all rare and precious. Even she couldn't help but exclaim, it's really rare to be able to get these. You said that you borrowed these from the saint? Tang Ku nodded. Su Li took a deep breath and thanked Rong Xiu earnestly. At the same time, she sighed with emotion. It's said that the Yintian Tower has been passed down for thousands of years and has a deep heritage. Now that I see it, it really lives up to its reputation. Rong Xiu's thin lips curved slightly. It's a waste to leave these things there. It would be best if they could be used by the two of you. Su Li let out a long sigh in her heart. Any one of these items was a treasure that was hard to come by in a lifetime. However, in Rong Xiu's words, it seemed to have become a worthless object. This is really, Chu Luiyue was confused as she watched from the side. At first, when she saw Su Li's reaction, she thought that she was cooperating with Tang Ku. At that time, she even silently sighed in her heart that her acting was not bad. However, the development that followed made her realize that Su Li's surprise and joy did not seem to be fake. One had to know that Su Li was a weapon-refining saint. She had seen countless treasures used to refine artifacts. What kind of treasure could make her so excited and happy? What kind of treasure could it be? Chu Luiyue glanced at Rong Xiu suspiciously. That day, he only said that he wanted Yan Qing to go back and get some things. It seemed very casual, so she did not take it to heart. But now, whoosh! Su Li took out a sword embryo from her universe ring. This sword embryo was ice blue and looked rather blunt. It was of excellent quality. If one looked closely, they could even see the twinkling stars on it. A faintly sharp aura spread out from it. Star Darkness Sword Embryo? A voice full of surprise came. Chu Luiyue turned around and saw that Sheng Guanjing had already come near at some point. Sheng Guanjing's eyes were fixed on the sword embryo, and his eyes were filled with unconcealed surprise and admiration. Chu Luiyue knew him too well. This was the expression of seeing a peerless treasure. Taizu, is this Star Darkness Sword Embryo very powerful? It's more than powerful. Sheng Guanjing's eyes were still unwilling to move away. He clicked his tongue. This sword embryo was born naturally. It gathered endless power of heaven and earth and turned into sword qi. Once it is refined into a sword, it will be extremely sharp. As long as there are no accidents, this thing will definitely be refined into a venerable divine weapon. Chu Luiyue immediately understood. No wonder. In that case, this Star Darkness Sword Embryo was indeed a rare treasure. Sheng Guanjing stroked his beard and glanced at Rongxiu sourly. Sigh, I've only heard of this thing. I've only seen it today. If he had known that Rongxiu had it, he would have asked for it earlier. Hearing this, Su Li immediately handed over the Star Darkness Sword Embryo. Shengguan, if you want it, this is for you. Sheng Guanjing hurriedly waved his hand to refuse. Mr. Su, how can I accept this? The Star Darkness Sword Embryo is extremely precious, and it's Senior Tang Ke's feelings for you. I have more. Su Li said in a gentle voice. Sheng Guanjing's expression froze. What? Su Li took a few steps forward and stuffed the Star Darkness Sword Embryo into Sheng Guanjing's hands. Then, she took out an almost identical Star Darkness Sword Embryo from the Universe Ring. Here, I have more. Sheng Guanjing's eyelids twitched. You have two? No. Su Li waved the Universe Ring on her hand. Swoosh. Swoosh. A few icy blue lights flashed, and everyone was dazzled. When they saw the scene in front of them clearly, they couldn't help but gasp. In front of Su Li, there were 5 Star Darkness Sword Embryos hanging neatly. I have a lot here. It doesn't matter if I give you one. Sheng Guanjing unconsciously clenched the Star Darkness Sword Embryo in his hand. Then, he stiffened his neck and looked at Rongxiu again. These they were all taken from Rongxiu? According to what Tang Ke had said before, he had divided the things into 2 portions and gave one to Su Li, which was exactly the same. If Su Li had 6 Star Darkness Sword Embryos, then he should have 6 as well. In total, there were 12 of them. Chu Luiyue was also shocked. Rongxiu had taken out all his wealth? No, even those first-rate families might not have such a storage, right? Looking at Rongxiu's casual manner, Chu Luiyue was sure that it was not difficult for him to take out all these things at once. In fact, he might even have more in stock. Although Chu Luiyue had been married to Rongxiu for a long time, she had never taken the initiative to ask about the Yuntian Tower's collection. It was only now that she realized that she had underestimated the Yuntian Tower's foundation from the beginning. No, to be more precise, all of these now completely belonged to Rongxiu. Other than the Star Darkness Sword Embryo, there were probably many other treasures hidden in Tang Ke and Su Li's Universe Rings. When all of these were added up, there was no doubt that it would be an extremely shocking amount. Su Li looked at Chu Luiyue and said with an envious expression. Little your husband is so rich. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2169. Chu Luiyue was speechless. Thank you, I only found out today. She thought of the little stock she had and fell silent. Compared to this person, she was so poor that she couldn't even begin to compare. Perhaps only the herbs in the small space under Qingshui Cliff could make a comeback. But in the end, it was Sanson's good luck that allowed her to take it for herself. And what Rongxiu took out could no longer be described as good luck. No matter how heaven-defying his luck was, he had never heard of someone who could pick up a treasure like the Star Darkness Sword Embryo like cabbage. Chu Luiyue finally understood why Su Li had reacted like that just now. Rong Xiu's lips curled up into a smile. Senior Shangguan, if you want, I'll ask Yan Qing to send you one later. Shangguan Jing's forehead twitched violently. Really? How many treasures did this kid have? He thought that Rong Xiu had already taken out everything, but he didn't expect that there were more. Su Li's eyes were also bright. Saint, I've used up all of these. Do you still have more? Rong Xiu nodded. Of course. Great. The only thing Su Li was interested in her life was refining artifacts. Forget about sleeping for 10,000 years, now that she finally had a body again, she had long been itching to do it. Now that the opportunity was in front of her, she could play to her heart's content. When she smiled, the dimples at the corners of her mouth deepened, and she looked more lively than her usual gentle appearance. Tang Ku raised his eyebrows when he saw her happy. If he had known that she was so easy to coax, he would have asked for more from Master. He cupped his fists and said to Rong Xiu and Shangguan Yu, "Thank you for your kindness. Previously, I am indebted to the two of you for your care. In order to express my gratitude, I will give all the divine weapons that I have refined this time to Lord Yu and the Holy Sun as a return gift." As soon as he said that, the noisy crowd suddenly fell silent. In an instant, everyone's expressions seemed to have frozen. At first glance, the scene seemed to have frozen. What did Tang Ku just say? This time, he was going to give away all the divine artifacts he had forged. Whenever he attacked, it would be at least a venerable artifact. Just the number of star nether sword embryos was already so shocking. If he could really refine all of these, it would definitely be a terrifying number. Chu Luiyue was also dumbfounded. For us? Tang Ku nodded. Not bad. Speaking of which, these things originally belonged to the Holy Sun, and I'm only using them to refine them. I hope the two of you don't mind. Everyone was in a mess, looking at Tang Ku with a strange expression. Disdain? Who in the world would dare to despise him? To be able to ask him to help refine a divine artifact was something that many people could only dream of. Now, he had taken the initiative to offer to refine artifacts, and not just one. Su Li immediately agreed. That's exactly what I was planning to do. In any case, once these things are refined, I won't be able to use them myself. Little you, I'll just give them to you. I just want to enjoy myself. Chu Luiyue coughed, but before she could speak, Rong Xiu smiled and nodded. Then I'll have to thank the two seniors. Chu Luiyue glanced at her man from the corner of her eyes. He couldn't be doing this on purpose, right? Rong Xiu's expression was as calm and magnanimous as usual. As if he had sensed her gaze, he also looked over. The moment the two of them looked at each other, Chu Luiyue instantly confirmed, this man had indeed thought of this long ago. These are the two seniors' kind intentions. Chu Luiyue, what he said was so reasonable that she actually couldn't refute it. Rong Xiu slightly raised his chin. There may be a lot of things, so you can first think about how to deal with and distribute them. Chu Luiyue. Asking the two saint refiners in the world to help refine artifacts, and in the end, saying that there were too many of them and that they should plan early, this man really wasn't afraid of being envied by the world. Boom! Just as she was thinking, she suddenly heard a thunderous explosion in the sky. She quickly looked up and saw that the clear blue sky was now covered with dark clouds. Within a short period of time, countless silver heavenly lightning bolts rushed over in response to the summons. Chu Luiyue held her breath. This is the strength of a saint refiner. Almost at the same time, Su Li also began. With a thought, she raised a hand and gently waved it upwards. In an instant, there seemed to be an invisible hand in the sky, pushing away the countless tianlei that had gathered in the middle. The two sides were clearly separated and resplendent. Half belonged to Tang Ku, and the other half belonged to her. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. This was the first time she had seen such a scene with her own eyes. With a flip of her palm, she easily stirred and controlled countless Tianlei. In the world, only a saint refiner could have such strength. Then, Su Li's fingertips moved. 5 Tianlei fell down at the same time, each rushing towards the 5-star dark sword embryos in front of her. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. Su Li was actually planning to refine 5 divine artifacts at the same time. On the other side, Tang Ke's sleeves fluttered, and those Tianlei also fell down. Suddenly, an icy blue light flew out and headed straight for Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue raised her hand and took that thing in her hand. For the sake of fairness, I will also refine these 5. Master Yu, if you are interested in the remaining one, you can play with it. Tang Ke's low and deep voice sounded clearly in everyone's ears. For a moment, everyone's expressions became even more strange. The corner of Chu Liyue's mouth twitched. Play with it, these words were too hateful. Chu Liyue lowered her head and looked at the star dark sword embryo in her hand. For a moment, she really didn't know what to do. She understood what Tang Ke meant. He wanted her to try using this thing to refine artifacts. However, this was a little too hasty. The material of the star dark sword embryo is not bad, it's good for you to use it to practice first. Even if you can't successfully refine a venerable artifact, it's good to have more experience. Rong Xiu came to her side and said gently. No one could guarantee a 100% success rate in refining artifacts, but practicing more would definitely be beneficial. Chu Liyue was silent for a moment. Using the star dark sword embryo to practice, only this man would be able to say such rich and overbearing words. She was a little tempted, but when she thought of Rong Xiu, she asked hesitantly, then. You don't want it? Rong Xiu smiled. I have this thing, and I don't need it right now. Chu Liyue was stunned for a moment before she understood what he meant. He had already broken through to the weapon refining venerable. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2170. Meeting Rong Xiu's gaze, Chu Liyue instantly confirmed her guess. Her eyelids twitched, and she felt that it was a waste of time and energy for her to ask this question. If he could take out so much, would he still be short of her share? In the end, she was too poor. She didn't understand the world of the rich. Oh, okay. Chu Liyue took the star nether sword embryo and moved to the side. Shang Guanjing asked, do you really want to try it now? Tang Ke and Mr. Su are refining together and have almost all of the Tianlei. Under such circumstances, if you want to succeed, you have to snatch the Tianlei from them. This is even more difficult than refining a venerable artifact. Chu Liyue nodded. This is a rare opportunity. If she could refine with Mr. Su and Tang Ke at the same time, she would be able to see the gap between her and them. This would undoubtedly greatly increase her efficiency. Moreover, she also wanted to see how far she could go with her current strength. Seeing that she had made up her mind, Shang Guanjing laughed, all right. Since you, wants to do this, then Taizu will accompany you. With that, he threw the star nether sword embryo in front of him. Chu Liyue nodded and did as she was told. Rumble. She looked up with fighting spirit surging in her eyes. Shang Guanjing raised his voice, your strength in refining is still not enough. You don't have to force yourself. As long as you can snatch a Tianlei from those two, you'll win. Ever since he saw Chu Liyue's potential in Tang Ke's tomb in the stone forest, Shang Guanjing had high hopes for her. After all, he was a refiner himself, so he naturally hoped that Chu Liyue could inherit his legacy. In other words, he hoped that she could shine in refining. It was also because of this that he agreed to Chu Liyue's suggestion without hesitation. He even secretly had a trace of anticipation in his heart. Not to mention her, even an ordinary refiner might not dare to guarantee that they would be able to successfully refine a venerable artifact under the influence of those two. Not to mention Chu Liyue. In his opinion, Chu Liyue could indeed be considered a success if she could snatch a Tianlei. Chu Liyue stood in mid-air and quickly mobilized the force in her body, causing the aura around her to rise crazily. Then, with a thought, she began to activate Tianlei. At this moment, she was flanked by Tang Ku and Su Li. Shang Guanjing was not far from her. Of course. Above their heads, countless subs, SSSS, SSSSS, SSSS, these Tianleis were also, they were They landed in a very regular pattern. Every time, there were 5 S, and each landed on the 5 nebula sword embryos. From this, it could be seen that Tang Ku and Su Li's control of Tianleis had reached a terrifying level. To snatch Tianlei from them meant that they had to break their monopoly. That was the most difficult part. As if sensing the power on Chu Liuyue's side, the Tianleis in the sky became restless. A few seemed to want to fly toward Chu Liuyue's side. However, under Tang Ku and Su Li's strict control, Tianleis still lingered in their position, unwilling to land. Chu Liyue narrowed her eyes slightly and raised her hand to grab them. Come down. Boom. As if someone had suddenly torn open a hole, Tianleis fell with a loud rumble, heading straight for Chu Liyue. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2171. Boom. Tianlei flew down, drawing a dazzling line in the sky, and then fiercely smashed onto the star-dark sword embryo in front of Chu Liyue. The silver light quickly shattered into countless tiny rays of light, enveloping the ice-blue sword embryo. Crackle, crackle, crackle. The sound was intertwined. Chu Liyue could clearly feel that there were two forces fighting back and forth. After a moment, the light gradually dissipated, and the star-dark sword embryo gradually revealed its original appearance. Chu Liyue looked carefully and realized that the color of the sword embryo had changed. It seemed to be purer and deeper than before. Although the change was extremely small, it was certain that the Tianlei from before had indeed had a tempering effect on the sword embryo. Chu Liyue's lips curled up. No matter what, a good start was half the battle. If she could snatch one, she could snatch more. Perhaps. It was unknown if she could really completely refine it in the end. Chu Liyue looked at Shang Guanjing and smiled brightly. Taizu, thank you for your auspicious words. Shang Guanjing looked at the star-dark sword embryo in front of Chu Liyue, and then looked at his own. His expression became extremely strange. This girl. Her movements are too fast. I haven't even made a move yet. She's already started? However, after a short period of shock, Shang Guanjing's heart was filled with relief and joy. He didn't know why, but summoning Tianlei seemed to be exceptionally easy for this girl. It was the same when they were in Tang Ku's tomb. She was the only one who could incite and devour the heavenly lightning that everyone else avoided. With such talent, it would be a pity if she didn't become a refiner. Haha. Girl, well done. Shang Guanjing was in a good mood. Just do whatever you want. Right now, he had the same thought as Rongxiu. This was a rare opportunity, let the girl practice. In any case, with so many people here, there was no need to worry about anything uncontrollable happening. Once they found any signs of something amiss, they would immediately intercept and deal with it. And if everything went smoothly, she would benefit greatly this time. With that, he held his breath and began to activate Tianlei. Boom! Boom! Several bolts of Tianlei came crashing down. Clearly, he had a much easier time doing this than Chu Liyue. When the surrounding crowd saw this scene, they could not help but sigh inwardly. No wonder Senior Tang Ku said that Shang Guanjing is very likely to become an equipment refining saint. His skill in refining equipment is indeed perfect. Yes. Under the circumstances where Tang Ku and Mr. Su are competing for Tianlei, he can still refine weapons so smoothly and freely. This is not something an ordinary person can do. Isn't it widely acknowledged that Shang Guanjing is powerful? His name had been resounding since 1,000 years ago. It wasn't strange for him to be able to do this. I'm more curious about Master Yu. Previously, she had only heard that Yu Zhu was an all-rounder in cultivation, but there were very few rumors about her refining weapons. Who would have thought that he would be so heaven-defying in this aspect? Did you see how that bolt of heavenly lightning came down? Everyone was talking about it. All kinds of voices could be heard, but Chu Luiyue did not care. After the first Tianlei was successfully activated, the rest of the process became much simpler. She began to follow Tang Ku and Su Li, activating the Tianlei to refine the Stardark sword embryo. They were refining 5 weapons together, and she was refining 1, so the process was consistent. In comparison, Shengguan Jing became the fastest one. With his current strength, it was indeed very easy for him to refine a venerable divine weapon. Especially when he used such good materials, it was like icing on the cake. Bolts of Tianlei fell from the sky one after another. Many people's gazes wandered back and forth between them. On one hand, they wanted to observe how the legendary refining saint refined weapons. On the other hand, they also wanted to see how Chu Luiyue snatched the Tianlei from the 2 of them, and if she could succeed. Of course, other than that, they were also comparing the various aspects of refining weapons, such as the control of Tianlei's strength and techniques. In the beginning, many people thought that Chu Luiyue would not be able to hold on for long. However, as time passed, they were shocked to find that Chu Luiyue did not seem to be defeated. In fact, she even followed Tang Ku and Su Li closely with every Tianlei. It was almost the same rhythm as the 2 of them. Thus, the crowd gradually became numb from the initial shock. Fortunately, many people had already seen how heaven-defying Chu Luiyue was when the Peach Blossom Cove was in chaos, so when they saw this scene, they quickly accepted it. It seems like she can do everything well. There were also some people who glanced at Rong Xiu from time to time. He stood outside the dazzling silver light with his hands behind his back, as if he had nothing to do with all this. He looked calm and composed. The violent energy waves spread to the surroundings, but when it reached him, it turned into a gentle wind, only lifting a corner of his snow-white robe. He was as graceful as a celestial, cold and noble. However, did all this really have nothing to do with him? Of course not. He was the one who provided these extremely precious and rare materials for refining artifacts. Moreover, the reason why he did not participate was because he did not need them. Even if the crowd did not hear the conversation between him and Chu Luiyue, it was not difficult to guess that he had most likely broken through to become a refining venerable. This was almost an indisputable fact. After this, according to Tang Ku and Su Li, all the divine weapons that were refined would belong to Chu Luiyue and Su Li. Moreover, Rong Xiu seemed to intend to let Chu Luiyue handle all of them. In other words, these divine weapons would eventually belong to Chu Luiyue. And this would be an extremely shocking number. Sanson moved to Cin side, rubbing his round palms as he whispered. "Big brother, the Holy Sun is going to give our master a big gift. Who can take out so many treasures in such a short time? Do you think he prepared them long ago?" Cin placed one hand behind his back, his expression calm and indifferent, ignoring him. Sanson did not give up and continued to ask. "I think it must be so. Why didn't he say earlier or later? He just had to take out so many at once when Senior Tang Ku said she wanted them. I'm guessing that they must have discussed this beforehand. Sir Su doesn't seem to know, but now, she joined in and became a free labor force. However, she was obsessed with refining weapons, so this was not a loss to her. Instead, it allowed her to satisfy her cravings. Everyone was happy. Cin gave Sanson an indifferent look. Seeing his small eyes flickering with excitement, Cin directly shattered his fantasy. The Saint and Senior Tang Ku's intentions are already very clear. These will belong to Master in the end and will not be stored. In other words, they would not be under Sanson's control. Sanson's face quickly fell, but he quickly regained his confidence and chuckled. That doesn't matter. I'll just count. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2172. In fact, as long as he took a look from afar and knew that it was an incalculable amount of wealth, he would be satisfied. Thinking of that scene, Sanson was simply overjoyed. His entire body was filled with a happy aura. Compared to this, what's the small deal I did before? A venerable divine artifact should be at least this much, right? Sanson stretched out his hand and used his round and chubby fingers to gesture a number. Just Tang Ku and Mr. Su alone this time, it's 10. How much is this? No, it's hard to buy it no matter how much money you have. A venerable divine artifact was different from other natural treasures. As long as one was lucky, one could obtain it. Treasures of this level required a strong foundation and strength to support them. Sanson's face was filled with emotion. Back then, how many venerable divine artifacts were the patriarch of family E worth? After this artifact refinement, our master will probably become the one with the most venerable divine artifacts in the entire Divine Ruins world. If word got out, who knew how many people would die of envy? Xin Yi's brows twitched slightly as his gaze swept past Rongxiu. That might not be the case. Sanson followed his gaze and immediately slapped his head. Oh, how could I forget about this person? If Rongxiu could take out so many as a gift, then how many more did he have? A day passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was already night. The sky was dark, and twilight covered the surroundings. Only the 2 balls of lightning in the clouds were still shining brightly. In fact, there were more than 2 balls. Above Shengguan Jing's head, several Tianlei gathered and gradually formed a small ball. Although it couldn't be compared to Tang Ku and Su Yu's, it was still independent of the 2 of them and forcefully opened up a path. Just this point alone was enough to prove that his strength had indeed touched the threshold of a weapon-refining saint. Above his head, 2 big and 1 small, 3 balls of light stood in a tripod. Chu Luiyue seemed very weak among them. However, the heavenly lightning on her side had never stopped. The 3 lightning seas seemed to be taking turns. When Shengguan Jing first found out that his Tianlei had also been snatched by her, he was happy for a long time. He had a faint feeling in his heart that this time, she might really succeed. It was already very late, but no one had left. Many people might not be able to witness such a magnificent scene in their lifetime. Naturally, they wouldn't miss this opportunity. Under the dense night sky, everyone was quiet and focused on watching. All of a sudden, Rongxiu's eyebrows twitched as a chill flashed across his eyes. Yan Qing. Yan Qing stepped forward, Master. When the 2 of them spoke, they deliberately adjusted their voices so that the people around them could not hear them. Family Wei's people, withdraw. Yan Qing frowned slightly. What do you mean? Wei Zhe is dead, and the family Wei is about to fall into chaos. There's no need to continue watching. Rongxiu said lightly. Yan Qing had already guessed this possibility, but she still felt very surprised when she heard it with her own ears. Yes. Then, do you want to investigate? No need. Rongxiu shook his head. Jun Zhiqing wouldn't leave any evidence behind, so there was no point in investigating. Yan Qing didn't ask any more questions. This small commotion didn't attract anyone's attention. Soon, it was noon of the 2nd day. Chu Luiyue stared at the star darkness sword embryo in front of her with all her attention. After a day and night of polishing and tempering, the round and thick sword embryo had completely changed its appearance. The sword body was a rich blue-black color, with countless silver dots flickering in it. At a glance, it was as bright as the starry night, magnificent and moving. A sharp aura faintly spread out from it. Chu Luiyue held her breath. She knew very well that as long as this sword underwent the final tempering, it was very likely to become a venerable divine artifact. It was just that this step was extremely difficult to cross. She hadn't made any preparations before, and it was already very difficult to reach this step. It could be said that the terrifying energy consumption had almost emptied her body's strength and mind. If she hadn't broken through to Venerable God before, she probably wouldn't have been able to hold on in the middle. Boom! At this moment, a loud explosion of energy was heard. Chu Luiyue looked up and saw that a sword had been completely tempered in front of Tang Ku. A powerful aura came crashing down from the sky. It was a venerable divine artifact. Boom! Almost at the same time, Suli on the other side was also completed. Then, there were a few more consecutive explosions. Large patches of dazzling light almost covered Suli's figure. The onlookers were dumbfounded. She actually refined these 5 venerable divine artifacts at the same time. Tang Ku quickly followed up. For a moment, terrifying energy surged in the entire sky. Shangguan Jing also attacked at the same time. 11 venerable divine artifacts appeared at the same time, and the commotion was earth-shattering. Qingshui Cliff began to shake. Sanson's heart suddenly jumped. But soon, Rong Xiao and the others took action one after another and set up a huge barrier to protect the bottom. Countless pairs of eyes looked at Chu Luiyue. Since she had already reached this step, would she be able to do it too? If that was the case, then all of them would be witnessing the birth of 12 venerable divine artifacts together. Chu Luiyue led the last Tianlei down. Silver light flashed, and every force was going through the final tempering of that sword. Chu Luiyue's heart jumped high. As long as, suddenly, a sharp sound entered her ears. Chu Luiyue was shocked and quickly lowered her head. The sound came from the pendant around her neck. This was left to her by Dugu Mabao back then. Her heart sank. Something happened. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2173. Because of this moment of absent-mindedness, the energy on the star darkness sword embryo in front of him began to become chaotic. The light on it also began to fade rapidly. When everyone saw this scene, they were all stunned. It was clearly fine just a moment ago. How did the situation take a turn for the worse in the blink of an eye? Looks like it's still not possible. In the end, it's a venerable artifact. How can it be so easy to refine? What a pity, there's only a little left. Rong Xiu's eyes focused, and a golden light flashed in his palm. Right at this moment, Chu Luiyue quickly calmed her mind, gritted her teeth, and directly reached for the sword. It was boiling hot. After this star darkness sword embryo had been tempered by several Tianlei, it was at its most abundant state of energy. Countless tiny silver lights were crazily swimming around on it. A vigorous force surged out from Chu Luiyue's body, and actually forcefully suppressed the energy that was about to go berserk. At the same time, a Tianlei appeared in the dark clouds that were about to dissipate. It struck down. Boom! That bolt of heavenly lightning landed directly on the sword embryo. The two forces fought fiercely. After a moment, the light on the sword embryo finally lit up again. Immediately after, a powerful pressure spread out from the sword body. The sword was complete. Chu Luiyue gripped the hilt of the sword tightly, and a faint smell of blood surged up between her lips and teeth. She quickly calmed the surging energy in her body and looked at the sword in her hand. This sword was different from the ones that Tang Ku, Su Li, and even Taizu had refined. Because there was a deviation at the last moment, the sword body, with the middle line as the boundary, was half reddish gold, and half was blue-black. Half was brilliant, half was cold. The two extreme powers intertwined and finally refined this unique divine artifact. Yuer. Shangguan Jing was the closest, and immediately rushed over, nervously sizing her up. Just now, after he finished refining, he had been watching seriously from the side. Chu Luiyue was fine at the beginning, but for some reason, she suddenly seemed to have lost her mind. At that moment, his heart was in his mouth, and he thought that she would definitely fail this time. Fortunately, she still succeeded. Chu Luiyue shook his head and smiled. I'm fine. It's just that a venerable artifact is indeed not easy to refine. She found a suitable excuse for that momentary mistake. Shangguan Jing let out a long sigh of relief and then said with emotion, of course. Many people spent their entire lives bitterly researching, but they still might not succeed. Girl, very good. This was her first attempt at refining a supremacy divine artifact, and she had succeeded. No one would believe him even if he told others about it. Even though there were some twists and turns in the process, it was still a success. He took Chu Liuyue's sword and examined it carefully. Although its power is a little mottled and it's not the best among the venerable artifacts, it's still very rare. Girl, from today onwards, you are also a weapon refining honorable. His voice was low and deep, carrying undisguised joy and pride. Su Li also came in a flash and looked at Chu Liyue with bright eyes. Little you, congratulations. Back then, even I had to try 3 or 4 times before I succeeded. You're amazing. The corners of everyone's mouths twitched. The world of geniuses was indeed not something that ordinary people could understand. Chu Liuyue's lips curved. It's all thanks to the seniors this time. If she had to fumble around by herself, she would have to spend a lot of time and energy. The reason why she could succeed this time was mainly because she followed these people step by step. Although she didn't have much experience in refining weapons, she had a strong control over Tianlei. In this way, as long as there was someone to guide her, she could easily succeed. Bang! A fine crackling sound came from the pendant on her neck. Chu Liuyue's heart trembled. She took it off and it instantly turned into powder. What's this? Su Li asked curiously. Chu Liyue didn't say anything, but her hands were slightly trembling. At this moment, something suddenly broke through the air from the distant horizon. Whoosh! The sharp whistling sound was incomparably fast, drawing a demonic purple line in the air. Chu Liyue immediately looked up. When she saw the purple light flickering with a faint glow, she suddenly realized something. That was, everyone noticed the commotion and raised their heads to look. The speed of that thing was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it was above the Peach Blossom Cove. Sensing the familiar aura, Chu Liuyue's mind moved and she immediately opened the barrier. Chi! That thing rushed towards Chu Liyue without hesitation. Su Li immediately became vigilant. Little you, be careful. Chu Liyue shook her head. Teacher Su, don't worry. I know what it is. As soon as she finished speaking, she raised her hand. That thing instantly retracted its aura and fell into her hand. Everyone looked at it suspiciously and nervously. When they saw what it was, everyone was stunned. Because it was actually a book. That book was thick and old, and it looked very old. Chu Liyue stared at the thing in her hand and pursed her lips. This was Lingxiao College's name list. You, An anxious voice could be heard. Everyone looked again and saw that it was Nan Su Huai who rushed over. He quickly came to Chu Liyue and saw the book lying quietly in Chu Liuyue's hand. His expression was complicated. Little you, I don't know why this thing suddenly went berserk and rushed out of the Donghuang Bell Tower. I didn't expect it to come to you, Chu Liyue said. I'll go back to the college with you. Rong Xiu suddenly walked over and held her hand. His broad and warm palm held her ice-cold hand tightly. I'll go with you. Chu Liyue turned around and met with a pair of deep and gentle eyes. The warmth spread from her palm to her whole body. The blood that seemed to have frozen in her body began to flow slowly again. She nodded gently. Okay. Rong Xiu looked at Tang Ku. We'll be back soon. Seniors, don't worry. Tang Ku nodded. If there's something urgent, you can go and deal with it first. As for here, since it's already started, there's no reason to stop. From what he said, it seemed that he intended to continue refining the divine artifact here. Su Li wanted to ask something, but Tang Ku suddenly came over and held her hand. Li Zi, the competition isn't over yet. Su Li looked at him in a daze and suddenly realized something. Perhaps something had really happened at Lingxiao College, but Rong Xiu and Sini clearly intended to go alone. Although she was worried, she thought that the two of them were powerful and had many trump cards. Nothing should happen to them. She nodded. Then. Little you, go quickly and come back quickly. Chu Liyue nodded and said to Tsin Yi. Tsin Yi, you stay here. While we're gone, you'll be in charge of everything in Peach Blossom Cove. Sunny nodded. Yes. Chu Luiyue hugged the book tightly. Let's go. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2174. After leaving Peach Blossom Dock, Chu Luiyue planned to follow Nan Suwai back to Lingxiao College. However, the book suddenly flew out of her arms and headed in a certain direction. Chu Luiyue and the others looked at each other. It seems that it doesn't want to go back to the college, Chu Luiyue said firmly. It has somewhere else to go. Her figure moved, and she chose to follow him without hesitation. Nan Suwai frowned. Girl, that. Did something happen? He was referring to Dugu Mabao. Although Dugu Mabao had never appeared in its true identity, Nan Suwai had already guessed it when Chu Luiyue used Dugu Mabao's power to repair the Sky Shuttle array during the chaos in Lingxiao College. After all, he was the dean. However, considering that Dugu Mabao didn't seem to want to reveal its existence, he had been turning a blind eye. Until this time, Chu Luiyue knew that Nan Suwai must have known Dugu Mabao's identity. She didn't say anything and only shook her head. I'm not sure yet. But he should have encountered some trouble. Her heart was beating fast, and she was anxious. Nan Suwai didn't say anything else, but his expression became more serious. Rong Xiao held her hand. Don't worry, Senior Lan Xiao has already reconstructed his divine body. He should be fine. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. I hope so. The three of them followed the book forward and finally arrived in front of a door realm. It was the gate realm that had just appeared. The few people in charge of guarding saw the three of them and immediately bowed. Greetings, Master Yu, Your Highness the Holy Sun. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly and asked. Have there been any abnormalities in the gate realm recently? The few of them looked at each other and shook their heads. Master Yu, everything is normal. Chu Luiyue looked at the gate realm. The translucent gate realm fell from the sky, shining with a faint glow. On the other side of the gate realm, nothing could be seen. The book suddenly flew toward the gate realm. Chu Luiyue's heart tightened, and he immediately followed closely behind. In the blink of an eye, Rong Xiao and Nan Suwai's figures also disappeared behind the gate world. A bone-chilling cold wind blew in his face. As soon as Chu Luiyue crossed the gate realm and barely managed to grab the book in his hand, he immediately felt an indescribable coldness wrapping around him. She looked up and instantly gasped in shock. This is the Red Moon Desert. The world in front of him was shrouded in overwhelming crimson. Beneath the veil of crimson was a world of ice and snow. As far as the eye could see, it was a snowy plain with no end in sight. The once vast and boundless yellow desert was now completely covered in white snow and ice. Snow was still falling from the sky, and the cold wind swept over, and a few pieces of ice blew on her face. It was cold and painful. Chu Luiyue had never thought that the Red Moon Desert would become like this one day. The entire world seemed to have been frozen, and it was so quiet that one could hear breathing. The aura of death and desolation filled every inch of the space. There seemed to be no traces of humans or even any living beings here. It seemed to have been like this since the distant past, and it had never changed since time immemorial. If it wasn't for the gate realm, Chu Luiyue wouldn't have believed that this was the Red Moon Desert. Why is this place like this? Nan Suwai muttered in shock. Rong Xiao frowned slightly, and remained silent. The bone-chilling coldness kept drilling into his body. Chu Luiyue suddenly sensed something, and looked down, only to see that her hand was covered in a thin layer of ice. When the snow fell on her body, it didn't melt. Instead, it started to connect with each other, and condensed into small pieces of ice. The cold air was dense, and it even brought along an indescribable pain. Pust! A reddish-gold flame suddenly ignited on her hand. The layer of ice started to melt gradually, but it was extremely slow. Obviously, this was different from ordinary ice and snow. There's something strange about this place. Chu Luiyue said in a deep voice. She was now a god expert, and her physical strength was extremely strong. Logically speaking, ordinary changes in the weather shouldn't have any effect on her. However, it was different here. Let's take a look inside, Rong Xiu said, and summoned Xue Xue. Lead the way. Roar. Xue Xue let out a low roar, turned on the spot, and quickly chose a direction, and rushed forward. Chu Luiyue and the others quickly followed. Xue Xue quickly brought them to the center. Chu Luiyue looked down. The clear lake, which was originally rippling with blue waves, was now frozen. On the surface of the lake, one could vaguely see the ripples spreading out. This lake froze in an instant, Chu Luiyue said. Otherwise, it wouldn't be like this. Could it be, this is Weiyu? Chu Luiyue raised her head slightly and looked at the sky. There were no clouds for thousands of miles, and only a blurry, gauze-like crimson covered the sky. She didn't know where it came from, why it was here, and what would happen next. However, she was certain that it must have some kind of close connection with the Dugu Mabao trio. It wasn't that Chu Luiyue hadn't imagined the scene of Weiyu, but she didn't expect it to be like this. Xue Xue leaped onto the snowy ground and paced back and forth by the lake. In just a short period of time, a layer of frost had formed on its body. Xue Xue, come back, Chu Luiyue called out. Xue Xue shook its body, shook off all the fine ice shards, and returned to them. Nan Suwai asked nervously. Little you, did you see something? How's that person? Before this, he had never been to the Red Moon Desert. Looking at Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu's reactions, he vaguely guessed that Dugu Mabao should have been here before. However, at this moment, he didn't sense any signs of life. He couldn't help but worry. Chu Luiyue didn't say anything, and looked at the book in her hand again. At this point, the restlessness of the energy on it had reached its peak. It was as if something was about to burst out from it. Chu Luiyue raised her wrist. The book flew in front of her, and then automatically flipped to the first page. On the title page, the purple scale armor flickered with a faint light, and the violent energy was emitted from it. Chi! In the next moment, the scale armor suddenly fell from the title page and flew towards the ice lake. It quietly floated above the lake. Suddenly, a line of black words slowly appeared on the frozen ice surface. Xin Yuan calendar, year 3572, beginning of autumn. Illusory God Palace, heavenly gate opens. When she saw the line of words clearly, Chu Luiyue's heart was instantly shaken. This was the date mentioned in the last sentence of her diary. She still clearly remembered that sentence she had written, Xin Yuan calendar year 3572, return at the beginning of autumn. At this moment, what Chu Luiyue didn't know was that at this moment, the same line of words had appeared in the sky of the Divine Ruins world. Illusory God Palace, heavenly gate opens the imperial edict, flashing in the entire world. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2175. Black words flashed in the sky of the Divine Ruins world. Countless cultivators seemed to have sensed it and looked up. The words were not big, but they were easily reflected in everyone's eyes. As they breathed, the words flickered. The Xin Yuan calendar was a calendar that had never been recorded in the history of the Divine Ruins world. The Illusory God Palace was a mysterious place that no one had ever heard of. Everyone was puzzled and looked at the sky in a daze. However, they seemed to have been inspired by something and gradually yearned for it. It seemed that after that, something was summoning the world. Family E. When Jun Juqing returned to the Family E, the guards at the gate immediately bowed. Greetings, family head. Their voices and expressions were extremely respectful. When their eyes swept over the half-folded divine vulture standing on Jun Juqing's shoulder, a deep sense of fear flashed across their eyes. A few months ago, they did not treat Jun Juqing like this. In a short period of time, Jun Juqing had taken over the position of family head and had the entire family E firmly in his hands. Anyone with a brain in the family E knew how to face this young family head with a different surname. Jun Juqing nodded and was about to walk in. Suddenly, he sensed a strange movement in the sky and looked up. The two guards also looked up curiously, their faces filled with shock and confusion. Why were there words in the sky? Jun Juqing narrowed his eyes slightly, but he did not seem surprised. After a moment, he retracted his gaze. Pass down the order. All the elders of the family are to head to the hall immediately. There's something important to discuss. The two guards did not know what was going on, but they immediately obeyed. Yes. After Jun Juqing left, the two of them looked at each other. Something big was going to happen in the Divine Ruins world. Nan family. The current Nan family had fallen apart. Only Nan Jinshu, who used to be one of the elders, managed to rise to the position of family head. He was Nan Yifan's younger cousin, and had coveted the position of family head for many years. Unfortunately, his strength was always a bit weaker than Nan Yifan's. It was only after Nan Yifan died and the clan fell into chaos that he finally got the chance. After the calamity of the Peach Blossom Cove, the Nan family had suffered heavy losses. They were no longer comparable to the Nan family at their peak. However, the Nan family had been passed down for thousands of years after all. They still had a certain foundation. Nan Jinshu had been ordering everyone in the Nan family to recuperate and recover their vitality. Even if they couldn't be as high and mighty as before, they could still barely contend with some of the first-rate families. Of course, Yuntian Tower was an exception. Nan Jinshu was stunned for a long time when he saw the line of words in the sky. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and became excited. The rumors about the ancestors are actually true? Phoenix God Mountain. When Yi Zhao returned, he did not deliberately hide his whereabouts. In fact, the matter of him and Mao Zhen heading to the Crimson Moon Desert together had already spread among the two great ancient divine beast clans. Therefore, there was no need to hide anymore. He went straight to the Phoenix Temple. When Elder Yu saw him, he was immediately delighted. Patriarch, you're back. How's Dumpling? The news had spread like wildfire outside. He was basically certain that Dumpling was safe. However, he could only be at ease when he asked about this matter properly. Yi Zhao shook his head. Someone forcefully opened her sixth meridian. Fortunately, Shangguanyu broke through to the Supreme God realm in time and helped her recover a lot. After recuperating for a period of time, there should be no major problems. Elder Yu was shocked. He almost thought that he had misheard. Someone forcefully opened her meridian? How is that possible? Who in the world has such ability? Also, that's not right. Dumpling's talent is already rare. She opened her fifth meridian at such a young age. What was the person who forced her to open her meridian by force? Yi Zhao took a deep breath. He put one hand behind his back and frowned. That's what I'm worried about. We've encountered some trouble in the Crimson Moon Desert, but we haven't found out who the mastermind is. Elder Yu's lips moved. His expression changed, and huge waves surged in his heart. Yi Zhao went with Mao Zhen. If he guessed correctly, something must have happened to Zichen. The two of them working together could be considered invincible. However, even they couldn't find anything. He felt a strong sense of uneasiness. He felt that there was something strange about this that he couldn't explain. Yi Zhao said, "Send more people later. You must investigate thoroughly. Don't let go of any clues." "Yes. I'll go now." Elder Yu had just turned around. Before he walked out of the square in front of the Phoenix Shrine, he suddenly felt something strange in the sky. He looked up. What he saw immediately caused him to be startled. "Patriarch. Look." Yi Zhao had already looked up. That line of words flickered silently in the sky and was clearly reflected in everyone's eyes. "Patriarch, this is..." Elder Yu was about to ask something when he saw Yi Zhao suddenly turn around and quickly enter the Phoenix Shrine. At the same time, the barrier outside the Phoenix Shrine flickered, and the pressure became even stronger. Elder Yu's heart trembled. What is the patriarch planning? He stood in place and pondered for a while. Then, he walked toward Fenghuang Valley. As expected, many people in the clan were looking at the words that suddenly appeared with different expressions. Elder Yu's heart tightened. Yi Zhao entered the Phoenix Shrine. He was silent and hurried along the way. Finally, he arrived before the huge mural in the middle of the shrine. Ancestor. He stared deeply at the figure of the ancestor who emerged from the fire. The Illusion God Palace's heavenly gate is finally opening again. The shrine was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. The figure on the mural remained silent. Peach Blossom Cove. This line of words appeared above their heads at the same time. Tang Ku, who had just finished refining the second batch of divine artifacts, stopped and looked up. He furrowed his brows, but they quickly smoothed out. Su Li also stopped and asked curiously. What's that? Where is the Illusion God Palace? The Heavenly Gate, is a gate? Tang Ku looked at her and shook his head. When the time is right, everything will be solved. Do you still want to continue? He was asking about the artifact refinement. Su Li paused and nodded. That's true. Then let's continue. The two of them had always been neck and neck, so she had always wanted to see who was the better one. As for the sudden appearance of the words, just as Tang Ku said, what would come would come. When the time was right, everything would be known. Everyone heard the conversation between the two and felt conflicted. Little Mina stretched lazily, squinted his eyes, and muttered weakly, that's right. The two of them have already refined 13 venerable divine artifacts each. Why do they still want to continue, after looking at the mural day and night for so long, even if they weren't tired, she was. She walked to Cinyi's side. Big brother, can I go to sleep? Cinyi's expression was indifferent. No. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2176. Little Hachi pursed her lips. She knew it. Big brother definitely wouldn't let her slack off on such an occasion. But I'm really sleepy. She leaned forward and pointed at her eyes. Big brother, I haven't slept for so long. The dark circles under my eyes are a lot heavier. Cinyi didn't even look at her. You can sleep here. Little Hachi, after so many years, Big brother was still as heartless as ever. She knew she shouldn't have counted on him. Little Hachi wrinkled her nose. Fine, I'll sleep. She took a few steps back and bumped into someone. She turned around and saw that it was Yan Qing. At this moment, she was so tired that she was about to go berserk. When she saw that it was Yan Qing, she didn't think too much and patted Yan Qing's shoulder. Lord Yan Qing, let me sleep on your shoulder for a while. Besides, Yan Qing was one of Rong Xiu's people. He wouldn't be as scared of Big Brother as Sanson and the others. Thinking about it this way, he was indeed the most reliable person. Little Hachi actually felt a little happy at this thought. As she spoke, her soft and boneless hand had already silently climbed onto Yan Qing's arm. She narrowed her eyes and was about to lean her head over. At this moment, Yan Qing suddenly grabbed her wrist and took half a step away. Little Hachi's head missed and she instantly sobered up. She looked at Yan Qing blankly. Yan Qing's voice was calm. Miss Little Hachi, this isn't appropriate. Little Hachi. What's not appropriate? Yan Qing paused. It's not appropriate in any way. How could a young lady casually lean on a man's shoulder and fall asleep? He didn't mind, but there were so many people watching. It wasn't good for her. Miss Little Hachi, if you're really sleepy, why don't you go back to sleep? Little Hachi widened her eyes. But Big Brother won't let me go back to sleep. Didn't you hear it? Yan Qing glanced at Cinyi. Actually, it didn't matter if Little Hachi stayed or not. She didn't know why Cinyi refused to let her go back. Seeing how unmoved Cinyi was, it seemed like he wouldn't change his mind. This was the matter of the 13th Yu, so he couldn't say much. If I don't sleep now, I'll really die. Little Hachi pursed her red lips and stretched out a finger to poke Yan Qing's shoulder. Look. Are you made of paper? You can't even let me lean on you. I want to sleep, I want to sleep. Her fingers, which were painted with delicate nail polish, were as slender as a scallion. She tapped on his shoulder again and again. I poked. I poked. I poked and prodded. Yan Qing finally caught her hand. Go to sleep. Little Hachi's brain was already confused. When she heard that she could sleep, she immediately became happy. Her head tilted, and she fell over. But this time, they still didn't reach their destination. Yan Qing reached out and held her forehead. Little Hachi blinked. Yan Qing waved his hand, and a ball of light that flickered with a faint blue light appeared in front of him. You can go in and sleep. Yan Qing said. There are bedding inside. Don't worry, everything is new. As for why he had this kind of thing, it had to be traced back to a long time ago. His master ordered him to prepare it. He prepared a lot. Some were given to his master to use, and the rest was left with him. Little Hachi was speechless. She was completely awake now. No need. Little Hachi took a deep breath. Yan Qing frowned slightly. Aren't you very sleepy? Don't worry, it's an independent small space inside, and there's a barrier. Little Hachi closed her eyes. She was afraid that if she saw Yan Qing's face again, she wouldn't be able to resist scratching a few beautiful blood flowers. I don't like this color. Little Hachi gritted her teeth and said. Yan Qing thought for a moment and asked hesitantly, then, change it to powder? You're the one who wants to sleep with powder. Your whole family is sleeping with powder. Little Hachi finally lost her temper. After saying that fiercely, she turned around and left. Not only was she not sleepy now, but she was also very energetic. At the side, 13 asked nervously. Sister 8 seems to be angry, Shifang said. When has she not been angry when talking to Lord Yan Qing? 13, that's true. After so many years of experience, the 13U sect knew very well that when little Hachi was angry, they must not talk to her. It was best if they didn't even look at her. Hence, they looked away in unison and looked at Tang Ku and Su Li, Yujio. It's such a blessing to watch two seniors refine artifacts. Sanson, that's right. I can still watch for another 100 years. Sun Yi finally spoke. Little Hachi. Little Hachi immediately pounced over with tears in her eyes. Big brother. Did Big Brother finally change his mind? Could she go back to sleep? Sun Yi raised his chin and asked, do you know how many divine artifacts the two of you have refined up until now? Little Hachi was stunned. I know. It's good that you know. Only then did Sun Yi give her a precious look. Seeing that you're very energetic now, we'll refine pills according to this number. As for the type of pills, you know in your heart. Little Hachi's forehead twitched. She shouldn't have rejected Yan Qing just now. Red Moon Desert. That line of words flickered with each breath. Snow kept falling from the sky, and the surrounding snow became thicker and thicker, but it avoided this ice lake. After a moment, the purple scale flew back to Chu Liuyue's hand. She looked down and saw that the light on it was much dimmer than before. Chu Liuyue slowly clenched her fists. They're not here. Her brows were tightly knitted together, and her heart felt like it was being squeezed by something. Cold snowflakes and ice particles kept blowing on her head and face. There was already a layer of sparkling ice and snow on her eyelashes. They are in the Illusion God Palace. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2177. However, what kind of place was the Illusory God Palace? She had no idea. Right now, the connection between her and Biyao had been severed. The only thing that could still be maintained was this piece of scale armor. But from the situation of this scale armor, Biyao's situation was also very worrying. Chu Luiyue looked around. Between heaven and earth, there was nothing at all. She suddenly thought of the pavilion in the sky from before. Could it be the illusory god palace? She muttered under her breath. At this time, the words on the ice lake slowly disappeared. Rong Xiu held her hand. We can't stay here for long. Let's go back first and discuss this matter. Chu Luiyue was about to nod when she suddenly thought of something. Wait first. She broke free from Rong Xiu's hand and flew towards the ice lake. Rong Xiu frowned and was about to go over when he heard Chu Luiyue say, Don't come over first. Rong Xiu stopped in his tracks. Nan Su Hui looked at Rong Xiu and also stopped, but his face was still full of worry. What are you doing? This place is very dangerous. You must be careful. Everything here was very strange, and it really made people worried. Chu Luiyue nodded. Thank you, Master. I know what to do. Swish. A rainbow light flashed. Scarlet Heaven's sword appeared in her hand. She held it tightly and stood on the ice lake. The cold wind from the snowy plains blew the ice and snow, rolling up the corners of her clothes. Her hair fluttered in the wind, but a thin layer of frost quickly condensed on the ends of her hair. It could be seen that the temperature here was very low and the weather was very cold. Chu Luiyue looked at the ice below her feet. The originally clear lake water had already frozen into a thick layer of ice. It was sparkling and translucent, making people unable to see the scene inside. In fact, she had always been very curious about what was under the lake water. She had stayed in the Red Moon Desert for a long time and had seen Biyao and the others walk out of the lake several times. But she had never gone down herself. She had always been smart and quick-witted. She could tell that Biyao and the others didn't really want to talk about these things, so she didn't ask anything about it. However, at this moment, a strong sense of curiosity surged from the bottom of her heart. Since Biyao and the other two were no longer here, she wanted to see what secrets were hidden below. She quickly circulated the force in her body and poured it all into Scarlet Heaven's sword. Wang! A sword hum rang out. On Scarlet Heaven's sword, scarlet gold and transparent flames intertwined and burned fiercely. Chu Luiyue held his sword with both hands and raised it high. Then, he swung it down viciously. Clang! The sharp edge of the sword cut into the ice, producing a crisp sound. Crack! A crack quickly spread out on the ice surface. At the same time, the flames on the Scarlet Heaven's sword quickly followed the crack in an instant. The blazing heat began to melt the layer of ice. More and more tiny cracks appeared and spread in all directions. Chu Luiyue held her breath and stared intently. However, at this moment, the snow and ice falling from the sky suddenly gathered in this direction. Snowflakes fell on the flames and cracks. The flames gradually extinguished, and the cracks gradually recovered. The crack that Chu Luiyue had slashed with all her strength was easily restored to its original state. How could this be? Chu Luiyue looked at the smooth ice surface and almost couldn't believe her eyes. Now that she was a god, she didn't hold back in the sword just now. Even if it was a mountain, this sword could raise it to the ground. However, there was only a shallow crack on the surface of the ice. Even if she had thought of igniting the flames in advance, it was still futile. In less than 15 minutes, all traces on the ice surface had been erased. At a glance, it was clean. Even the rippling patterns didn't change in the slightest. Her sword, it didn't have any effect on it at all. Cold air came from all directions, piercing into her body like steel needles. A dazzling light flashed on her body and covered her with a layer of transparent and gorgeous soft armor. Only then did it expel the cold air. Chu Luiyue didn't believe it and slashed again. Clang! The moment the sword landed, a Xian formation suddenly appeared under the ice surface. A wave of indescribable pressure spread out from the top. Chu Luiyue was the first to bear the brunt. When she sensed the aura, she already knew that something was wrong. Immediately after, a crisp cracking sound was heard. Crack. A look of horror flashed across her face. That was because the Scarlet Heaven sword in her hand broke the moment it was enveloped by the light of the Xian formation. She didn't even think and immediately retreated. A ray of light wrapped around the Scarlet Heaven sword and came over. Rong Xiu immediately attacked. A ray of golden light flickered and quickly passed by Chu Liuyue's palm. The Scarlet Heaven sword was instantly cut in half. Almost at the same time, the broken sword body shattered into countless tiny pieces. The Scarlet Heaven sword was completely destroyed. Chu Liyue lowered her head and saw that there was only a broken sword hilt left in her hand. She immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. Rong Xiu went forward and grabbed her waist, bringing her away from the lake. Then, he took a step forward and protected her behind him. On the ice surface, the Xian formation gradually appeared and flickered. Rong Xiu's eyes that were as deep as the sea seemed to be gradually rippling. Nan Su Hui rushed over in a hurry. Are you all right? Chu Liyue shook her head and looked at the lake with a complicated gaze. Whose seal is that? Wonderful book house. Chapter 2178. It was a Xian formation, and also a seal. It was extremely complicated, and its pressure was extremely strong. She had been in the Red Moon Desert for many years, but she had never seen this seal before. But strangely, for some reason, she felt that the aura on it was somewhat familiar. She thought of that eye. The dangerous moon was approaching. What secrets were hidden below? There are layers of restrictions below. I'm afraid we can't go in. Rong Xiu said. Chu Liyue nodded and summoned a long sword. It was the venerable divine weapon that she had refined with the Star Darkness sword embryo. Half of it was pure gold, the other half was dark green. It was especially bright against the white snow. With a thought, a flame surged out and melted the broken hilt of the Scarlet Heaven sword. The artifact spirit was refined, and under the guidance of the flame, it fused with the new sword. The Star Darkness sword embryo is forged, so it should be called the Star Darkness sword. The sword was shining brightly, and its sword chi was sharp. It was indeed a pity that the Scarlet Heaven sword was destroyed. Fortunately, she had personally refined this Star Spectre sword, which was perfect. Chu Liyue looked at Rong Xiu. Biyao and the others are most likely trapped in the Illusion God Palace. We need to find that place quickly. Biyao and the other two had been trapped in the Red Moon Desert for tens of thousands of years and had never left. But this time, the three of them had disappeared very suddenly. This made her feel very uneasy. Rong Xiu paused for a while and said, I know where the Illusion God Palace is. Tens of thousands of miles away. In a dark and cramped cell, Dugu Mabao sat alone. His soft armor-like purple robe was damaged in several places, and his body was covered in blood. It seemed that he had just gone through an intense battle. After a while, a hoarse and rough voice came. Have you thought it through? Dugu Mabao did not react as if he did not hear it. The voice chuckled. Tens of thousands of years of imprisonment and torture can't make you waver? Dugu Mabao was still unmoved. His pale face was stained with dried dark red blood, which made him look even more haggard. But his back was straight like a pine tree in the snow, with a noble arrogance that went deep into his bones. This attitude seemed to make the other party a little angry. Dugu Mabao, you're very stubborn. But have you thought about whether those two people are like you? If you don't relent, they'll have to suffer another day of torture. No matter what, they are friends who have accompanied you for 10,000 years. Can you really bear to leave them to die? Dugu Mabao's eyebrows moved. That pair of demonic purple eyes flashed with a cold light. You don't dare to kill them. His voice was calm and firm. Every word was like a heavy hammer that smashed into the empty and dark cage. The voice quieted down. After a while, it said, I won. It's a pity that Lan Shao has just refined his divine body, but compared to Diwu Zhangzi, he's still better. You know how painful it is to enter the illusionary god ocean without a divine body. After all, you've already experienced it tens of thousands of years ago, haven't you? That voice had a hint of smugness, as if a prank had succeeded. It was cold and sinister, making one's heart tremble. Duga Mabao's hands curled up in his sleeves, and his voice turned colder. You'll be punished for breaking the contract. Pfft, the other party sneered in disdain. Duga Mabao, you're the one who broke the contract first, aren't you? You've already broken the taboo by reconstructing your divine body. Lan Shao is your man, so it's fine. But, when Diwu chose to betray you, he should have known that this day would come. It seems like these 10,000 years of punishment didn't teach him enough of a lesson. The corners of Duga Mabao's lips suddenly curled into an extremely faint arc. He betrayed you and is still stubborn to this day. Doesn't that mean that you're a failure? Smack. As soon as he finished speaking, a long whip viciously lashed Duga Mabao's back in the darkness. His skin instantly split open. He groaned, and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The mockery in his eyes became even more intense. The illusionary god palace's heaven gate is about to open. Everything will come to a conclusion. When that time comes, you'll know how foolish your actions today were. That voice lingered in the cage for a long time before finally dispersing. After confirming that the person had left, Duga Mabao's body swayed, and he coughed violently. His mouth was filled with the thick smell of blood. After coughing for a while, he casually wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He placed his hands on his knees and continued to sit cross-legged, waiting. The heaven gate is about to open. You, should be coming soon, right? A hint of worry flashed across his brows, but it quickly disappeared. You know? Chu Liuyue's eyes flashed with deep shock. Why didn't you mention it before? Rong Xiu smiled faintly. You didn't ask before. Anne. I'm not the only one who knows about this place. Seniors Yi Zhao and Mao Zhen, as well as some first-rate families with thousands of years of history, should have heard of it. Chu Luyue came back to his senses. This is a place that exists in distant legends. It is said that tens of thousands of years ago, a mysterious place appeared in the world of divine ruins. It was called the Illusory God Palace. There, the energy of heaven and earth was abundant, resources were abundant, and experts were as common as clouds. More importantly, if one could enter and cultivate, it was very likely that one would break through the shackles of a god and become an even more powerful existence. But later on, for some reason, that place disappeared. Gradually, fewer and fewer people knew about it. There were also people who speculated that the illusory god palace was a divine relic. Every tens of thousands of years, it would descend to the world to cross that threshold and become a peerless expert. However, these are all rumors, and no one has personally witnessed it. I just didn't expect it to appear now. Chu Luyue muttered, break through to a god, in the world of divine ruins, for nearly 10,000 years, no one had succeeded in breaking through that shackle. Duga Mabao and the other two seemed to be such existences, but for some reason, they had been suppressed in the Red Moon Desert for tens of thousands of years, and the world didn't know of their existence. Suddenly, her pupils shrank. Wait, when that strange palace appeared here, there were rumors in the world of divine ruins that it was related to breaking through to a god. Could it be the illusory god palace? Or is it closely related to the illusory god palace? Rong Xiu paused. At that time, the fog was everywhere. Did you see the words on the plaque? Chu Luyue shook her head. In fact, because of the white fog, she didn't even get a glimpse of the palace. She only remembered the black jade square and the magnificent and towering circular wall. Perhaps, we will know everything when we reach the illusory god palace. Chu Luyue clenched the purple scale in her hand, pursed her lips, and nodded. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2179. Chu Luyue and the other two stayed in the Red Moon Desert for about 10 days as they wanted to find some relevant traces. Unfortunately, He didn't get any useful information after all that effort. Instead, the weather was getting colder, and the snow was getting thicker. Even they were starting to feel a bit tormented. Chu Luiyue tried a few more times to split open the frozen lake surface, but all of her attempts ended in failure without exception. The seal floated quietly on the surface of the ice. It flickered lightly, but it also carried with it an unparalleled pressure. In the end, they could only choose to leave for now. According to Rong Xiu, Chu Luiyue planned to return to Peach Blossom Cove first, then discuss the Illusion God Palace with Mao Zhen and Yi Zhao. Nan Su Hui wanted to go with them, but after careful consideration, he returned to Lingxiao College first. Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu had just returned to the Yu residence when Sun Yi greeted them. "Master, Your Highness." Chu Luiyue asked as they walked in, "How are Tang Ku and Sir Su?" "When we came back, there wasn't much activity at Qingshui Cliff. Master, the two seniors just finished their competition and are resting in their residences." Chu Luiyue was a bit surprised. "Just now? They just finished?" Based on their refining speed, it shouldn't have taken that long, right? Sun Yi nodded and explained, "Yes. The two of them refined a lot of divine artifacts this time, so they finished very late." Chu Luiyue paused. "How many?" She remembered that Tang Ku and Su Li had said that they would give all the divine artifacts they refined to her. Sun Yi said. The two of them refined 42 divine artifacts each, for a total of 84. Chu Luiyue's eyes widened. "How many did you say?" Sun Yi's expression was as calm as ever. "A total of 84 divine artifacts, and all of them are venerable divine artifacts. The two of you have already handed them over to this subordinate, and I'm just waiting for you to come back." As he spoke, he took out 2 yin and yang rings. These 2 yin and yang rings looked a bit different, and each had a small seal mark on it. The one on the left is Senior Tang Ku's, and the one on the right is Sir Su's. Sun Yi respectfully presented them with both hands. The two of them said that you must personally examine them and choose one that you like. Chu Luiyue. I remember that they used the same materials. Then these, as you think, these are the same. This subordinate has observed the entire process, and the two of them are indeed equally matched. Chu Luiyue was speechless. She put away the 2 cosmos rings and checked them separately. Sure enough, both the quantity and the type were exactly the same. How were they to compete? Chu Luiyue looked at the 2 small cosmic rings in a daze. 84. Back then, how many of Yang, how many lives, heaven? Now that the two of them were working together, they were able to refine so many in one go. It was truly terrifying. Recently, many families and clans in the world of divine ruins heard the news and sent letters to buy these divine artifacts. I didn't dare to act rashly, so I sent them to your study and waited for you to come back and personally review them. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. They're quite fast. The news of Tang Ku and Sun Yi staying in Peach Blossom Dock had long spread, and the news of the two of them starting to refine artifacts together had spread like wildfire from the beginning. Who wouldn't be jealous of nearly 100 venerable divine artifacts? Who wouldn't be envious? All of a sudden, all the families and clans heard the news, hoping to trade for some from Peach Blossom Dock. King divine artifacts were already precious enough, let alone venerable divine artifacts. There were very few families like Family E and the Nan family. There's no need to read them. Reject all the letters. Chu Luiyue continued to walk in. On one hand, it was the goodwill of the two seniors, so it wasn't convenient to give it away. On the other hand, it was because of the illusory god palace. Thinking of this, her expression froze. By the way, after we left, did anything unusual happen in the world of divine ruins? Sun Yi nodded. Yes. The illusion god palace's heaven gate is about to open, and everyone in the world of divine ruins has already started to prepare. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Everyone already knows? Sun Yi recounted the scene that day to her. At this point, all the cultivators in the world of divine ruins have already heard the news. Moreover, There's a rumor that as long as one can enter the illusion god palace, they can break through to the supreme god level. So, everyone is ready to make a move. Chu Liuyue's heart suddenly sank. But did you find out who released the news? Cini shook his head. Someone is secretly adding fuel to the fire, purposely stirring up this pool of water. It's already impossible to trace the source of the news. Chu Liyue pursed her lips. If that was the case, the world of divine ruins would be in chaos. But they don't know where the illusion god palace is. Even if they know, what can they do? Sun Yi frowned, and a complicated expression flashed across his eyes. An ominous feeling rose in Chu Liuyue's heart. Sun Yi said, "The bridge to the illusion god palace has been built." Chu Liyue was shocked. "What did you say?" Sun Yi said, "When night comes, you'll know what I mean." The waiting time was always unbearable. Chu Liyue stood in the courtyard, staring at the sky. It was already evening, and there was still some time before the sky turned dark. She kept thinking about everything that had happened before, and vaguely felt like there was an invisible net covering her. It was like fate, and she couldn't break free. Night fell bit by bit. When the first star shone in the black velvet-like night sky, the bridge finally appeared. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2180. In the thick night sky, a silver-arched bridge stretched across the sky. One end of the bridge connected to the distant horizon, while the other end extended into the sky, into the clouds, and connected to an unknown place. Grand, brilliant, gorgeous, and noble. Specks of light gathered together, forming a silver bridge that seemed to have substance. But upon closer inspection, those specks of light did not seem to be simple specks of light, but seemed to be engraved with some kind of pattern. But because it was too far away, it was impossible to see clearly for the time being. That bridge has appeared since the night that those words flickered in the sky of the divine ruins world. Chu Liyue recalled Sun Yi's words, and countless thoughts flashed through his mind. In the beginning, it was just a ball of gathered light, born at the point where heaven and earth met. It was difficult to reach, and it did not sleep at all. But gradually, those rays of light spread out towards the sky, little by little forming the shape of a bridge. Until now, that bridge still appears every night and continues to extend. No one knows what it is, but everyone is certain that the end of the bridge must be the legendary illusory god palace. The day the bridge is completely grafted is the day the heaven gate opens. Chu Liyue stared at the bridge in the sky, and after a long time, he exhaled softly. Sun Yi's guess should be the guess of all the cultivators in the divine ruins world. Such a strange and beautiful scene was unfamiliar and novel to them. Humans were always curious about the unknown with fear. Even if they knew it was dangerous, they would still want to try it for themselves. This time was no exception. Moreover, behind that bridge was very likely to be a huge opportunity. Who wouldn't be tempted? Back then, when the new gate realm opened, it attracted so many people to go there, not to mention the current situation. Still looking at this? Rongxiu walked out of the room and put a coat on Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue gathered his clothes, and after a moment of silence, he asked, "Do you think that the place connected to is really the legendary illusory god palace?" If that was the case, then Biyao and the rest were there as well? Rongxiu held her hand. Perhaps it was because of the cold night wind, but her fingertips were also cold. Rongxiu wrapped her hand in his palm and sensed that her body was gradually warming up before he said, "Don't worry. No one can say for sure. We'll only know when we get there." "That's true." Chu Liyue turned to look at him. That pair of serene and deep phoenix eyes were calm and tranquil, reflecting two tiny figures of her. He whispered, "What are you thinking about?" His voice was low and gentle as usual. Chu Liyue hesitated for a moment. "Rongxiu, I feel like there's a hand pushing me over." Although she didn't know who was behind this, there was indeed an invisible hand that was slowly pushing her in this direction. The illusory god palace definitely had some sort of connection with her. But she didn't know why, but she didn't have any memories related to it. Rong Xiu lowered his head and kissed her forehead. Don't be afraid. No matter where you go, I'll be with you. No matter the distance, life or death. Chu Liuyue's uneasy heart instantly calmed down. She raised her head slightly and kissed him. Before he could react, she rested her head on his shoulder and rubbed it gently. I'm not afraid. I have you. What? You invited Grandpa Maozhen over? In another courtyard, Dumpling and Zichen were sitting face to face around a stone table. There were many fresh and juicy berries on the table. These were all specially selected by Sanson. Each and every one of them was a rare heavenly treasure. They were extremely effective in replenishing energy and healing injuries. They were originally for Zichen, but now they were all Dumplings. At this moment, Dumpling was gnawing on a red fruit that was bigger than her fist. Hearing Zichen's words, she suddenly stopped and raised her head in shock and confusion. Yes. They should be here tomorrow. Zichen said and glanced at her. Her little mouth was stained with red juice and a few white sesame seeds. A pair of black grape-like eyes blinked, full of confusion. Raise your face. Zichen said. What? Dumpling asked curiously, but she still raised her face obediently. Zichen reached over and wiped the white sesame seeds off the corner of her mouth. No one is fighting with you. Just eat slowly. Zichen withdrew his hand and said lightly. Dumpling realized that she was eating too happily and didn't know when she had eaten so much. She wiped her mouth and her hand was suddenly stained red. It was rare for her to feel a little embarrassed. I don't know why, but recently I've been hungry. She looked at the fruit in her hand hesitantly and then looked at the half-empty plate on the table. It was all hers. It seemed that she had eaten a little too much. Zichen withdrew his gaze and his handsome face was expressionless. Don't waste it. Oh. Dumpling heard this and felt a lot more at ease. She muttered as she ate. Grandpa Patriarch also sent me a message saying that they will be here in 2 days. Strange, didn't they just go back not long ago? Why are they coming again? Although she was young, she had followed Chu Luiyue to these two ancient mythological beast clans several times. Under normal circumstances, Mao Zhen and Yi Zhao would never appear at the same time. For so long, it had only happened twice. The first time was because of Rong Xiu and Chu Liuyue's wedding. The second time was because of her and Zichen's accident. But this time, is it because of that bridge? Dumpling raised her head and looked at the bridge in the sky. Zichen narrowed his eyes. Probably. I don't know how that bridge appeared. Dumpling pouted and stuffed the last bit of fruit into her mouth. I feel a little uncomfortable when I see it. Zichen frowned and looked at her. Uncomfortable? What's the matter? Dumpling shook her head. Her small mouth was full and her words were a little unclear. She raised her small hand and pointed at the bridge. I don't know. Anyway, it's just, Zichen reached out and pulled her hand over. He put 2 fingers together and placed them on her wrist. He separated a part of his power and probed into her body. After a round of examination, he did not find anything unusual. Because she had opened her 6th meridian, Dumpling's body was much better than before. Her power was also more abundant than before. If she were to say that she was uncomfortable, there was no reason for it. Dumpling looked at his serious face and immediately smiled. I'm fine. Don't worry, I'm very healthy. Maybe I ate too much? Zichen did not comment on her statement, but he did not continue to ask. All right, since you're done eating, I'll go first. Dumpling clapped her hands and jumped down from the stool. Zichen raised his eyebrows slightly. Go? Where to? Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2181. Dumpling said in a crisp voice, Of course I'm going back to sleep. Zichen paused. Isn't there a place for you to sleep here? During this period, Dumpling had been sleeping in the same room as him. Dumpling blinked. But your injury has already healed. Zichen's injury had indeed healed very quickly. He had even removed all the gauze during the day. She walked over and held Zichen's hand, revealing his smooth wrist. She nodded. Look. It's all healed. Other than the skin color around the wound that looked a little different from the other parts, it had basically completely recovered. Zichen felt that his wrist was a little itchy. He quietly withdrew his hand and thought for a moment, as if he was deliberating. I thought it would be a while before Master came back, so, Dumpling was very clingy. Most of the time, she was clingy to Chu Luiyue, but this time, she and Rong Xiu did not bring the two of them with them when they left. He thought that Dumpling would not be willing to sleep on her own after her injury healed today, so he specially tidied up the room next door. But unexpectedly, you can go back if you want. Although she might be a little tired from this trip, she should be fine with the holy sun around. As Zichen spoke, he stood up and was about to go back to the room. Dumpling, however, instantly felt a little conflicted. Ah. That's right. Rong Xiu was also there. She jogged a few steps and caught up with Zichen. She looked up and she raised her head and asked, Zichen, do you think it's inappropriate for me to go back now? It was not that she had a high level of self-awareness, but that she had learned her lesson too many times. She did not want to be thrown out by someone again. Zichen stopped in his tracks and looked at the sky with a calm expression. It's fine. Although it's a little late, she has always doted on you the most. It's fine. Hearing what he said, Dumpling felt even more unsuitable. Ah, then I can't go back even more. I'd better sleep here. After saying that, she ran in with her small feet. Zichen. Can I sleep on the bed tonight? Dumpling turned around and stuck out her round head. Zichen nodded slightly. Yes. The next day, Maozhen arrived at the Peach Blossom Cove. Without stopping to rest, he directly entered the Yu residence. When he passed through the barrier, Chu Luiyue already knew that he was coming and specially came out to welcome him. Senior Maozhen. Chu Luiyue stepped forward. Sorry to trouble you to come again. Maozhen waved his hand. His expression was no longer as relaxed as before, and there was a hint of seriousness between his brows. Let's talk inside. In the hall, Chu Luiyue and Maozhen sat facing each other. Where's Rong Xiu? After taking a seat, Maozhen looked around and did not see Rong Xiu. He could not help but feel a little strange. Chu Luiyue said, Umo just rushed back from the Yuntian Tower. He said that he had something to report, so I came over first. Maozhen nodded and said, it's fine. He's wholeheartedly loyal to you. It's the same for him to talk to you. Chu Luiyue nodded with an apologetic look on his face. Actually, we should be the ones paying a visit this time, that's fine. In fact, even if I didn't hear from you this time, I was planning to come over. Maozhen's expression was rarely serious. This made Chu Luiyue tense up as well. I heard that Nan Suhui was here. Did you guys go to Lingxiao College? Chu Luiyue shook his head and briefly explained the matter. He included the disappearance of Biyao and the others. It was just a few words, but it made Maozhen's expression even more serious. So, those people are no longer in the Red Moon Desert, but in the Illusory God Palace? He had already guessed it before, but Chu Luiyue didn't say anything, so he didn't ask too much. Now it seemed that those people's identities were indeed extraordinary. However, now wasn't the time to think about this. Whether it's true or not, we have to go to the Illusory God Palace to take a look, Chu Luiyue said. Maozhen sighed. The heaven gate of the Illusory God Palace is about to open. The entire Divine Ruins world is restless. However, this trip is too dangerous, so I'm here to tell you. Don't be impatient. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Senior Maozhen. You seem to know something about the Illusory God Palace? Mao Zhen smiled bitterly. Not really, but we have some connections. The ancestor of the great phoenix dragon race died in the illusory god palace. Chu Luiyue didn't expect him to say such words. He was shocked. This doesn't seem to be the case, you said it yourself. Those are all rumors. Mao Zhen patted the armrest of the chair and sighed. Actually, only the great phoenix dragon race's clan leader knows about this. This matter is of great importance and is extremely confidential. If the heaven gate of the illusory god palace wasn't about to open, I wouldn't have revealed this matter. Chu Luiyue thought of the coiling dragon pillar in the great void temple. Even though there was only a trace of the great phoenix dragon ancestor's aura left in it, it was still powerful and awe-inspiring. From this, one could see how powerful that person was when he was at his peak. It was rumored that he died naturally. Who knew that it was related to the illusory god palace? In fact, it's not just the great phoenix dragon race. Mao Zhen looked at Chu Luiyue with a complicated expression. The one from the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan is the same. Even. He suddenly paused as if he thought of something and frowned. The hall was silent. Chu Luiyue was a little stunned. Even? Even what? From Mao Zhen's words, could it be that the ancestor of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan had an even more? Why isn't Yizhao here? Mao Zhen suddenly asked. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2182. Chu Luiyue felt a little strange. Senior Yizhao should be here soon, right? Have you sent him the news? Mao Zhen asked. Chu Luiyue nodded in confusion. Of course. I sent the news to both of you at the same time. Peach Blossom Cove was quite far from Phoenix God Mountain and Divine Dragon Island. However, this wasn't a problem for Yizhao and Mao Zhen. With their speed, they would arrive in less than a day. However, Mao Zhen was faster than expected. As for Yizhao, it didn't seem to matter if he was a little late. Why did Mao Zhen look a little worried? Senior Yizhao followed me back to Peach Blossom Cove and just left not long ago. I think he will be a little late this time, right? Mao Zhen gradually frowned. No, he knows the importance of this matter. Logically speaking, he should be here before me. Why isn't he here yet? He looked outside, but there was no movement at all. Chu Luiyue gradually felt a little uneasy. Mao Zhen was a forthright person. If he hadn't really encountered something troublesome, he definitely wouldn't have such a reaction. And his worry for Yizhao didn't seem to be without reason. Wait a little longer. Perhaps he will be here soon. Chu Luiyue said. Senior Mao Zhen, you said that we shouldn't rush to the illusory god palace. Is it because something happened to the great Phoenix Dragon clan's ancestor there? Mao Zhen nodded and then shook his head. Sort of, but not completely. There are some things that I can't explain to you clearly now. Since Yizhao is here, you will know after listening. At this moment, Xin Yi suddenly came in from outside in a hurry. Chu Luiyue saw that his expression was a little abnormal, and his heart skipped a beat. Master, something happened to the meteor sect. Xin Yi walked in and handed over a black feather with both hands. Chu Luiyue immediately stood up and walked over. He took the black feather in his hand. It was still stained with blood. Chu Luiyue was very familiar with this aura. This is the feather of the legendary three-eyed eagle that Shi Rui contracted. Her brows were tightly knitted together. Xin Yi explained, just now, someone brought this feather over, but before I could ask about it, that person had already breathed his last. This subordinate recognizes him. He is one of the elders who accompanied Shi Rui, to the Red Moon Desert. Chu Luiyue immediately asked, where is he? Xin Yi shook his head. He was poisoned. Half an hour after his death, he turned into a pool of blood. What a vicious method. Did you find out what kind of poison it was? Little Hachi has already gone there, but whether or not we can find out is still unknown. Did that person leave any message? Not at all. When he came, he was already mute. Chu Liuyue's heart trembled. What kind of person would do such a vicious thing to the Flying Star sect? Moreover, this method was truly powerful. No matter what, the Flying Star sect was still a first-rate family in the Divine Ruins world. According to Chu Liuyue's understanding, they did not have any deep grudges with anyone. Logically speaking, it was impossible for them to attract such a disaster. Those who had gone to the Red Moon Desert with Shi Rui were basically all venerable god experts. What kind of power could force them into such a miserable state? Chu Liyue kept the feather. Let's go to Little Hachi. She had just taken half a step when she turned back to look at Mao Zhen with some hesitation. Mao Zhen immediately said, I'll go with you. Chu Liuyue's group quickly arrived at the city gate. At this moment, Little Hachi was standing there with her arms crossed. She was carefully staring at a pool of dark red blood on the ground. Little Hachi. Chu Liyue quickly went up to her. When Little Hachi heard the voice, she raised her head and looked over. However, at this moment, her delicate and beautiful face was dyed with a trace of worry. Chu Liyue walked closer and looked at the ground. The pool of blood had already dried up. All that was left was a patch of dark red blood and a faint stench. But did you notice something? Little Hachi shook her head in defeat. No. She was good at these things and had seen all kinds of strange poisons. However, she really could not recognize it this time. Chu Liyue bent down to take a look. This smell was somewhat familiar. She seemed to have smelled it somewhere before. However, she could not recall where she had smelled it before. Chu Liyue frowned slightly. You residents. Dumpling was still sleeping on the bed. Zi Chen had already woken up early in the morning. When he saw Dumpling kicking the blanket away restlessly, he got up and walked over to her. Just as he covered her with the blanket, she turned over and kicked it away. Her foot almost landed on Zi Chen's face. His face darkened. He grabbed her little white foot and stuffed it under the blanket. However, Dumpling began to struggle uneasily again. Zi Chen was about to speak when he suddenly saw Dumpling frowning. There seemed to be tears at the corners of her eyes. There was panic in her eyes. Was she having a nightmare? He paused and gently patted Dumpling's face. Dumpling, wake up. Dumpling? Dumpling seemed to have fallen into a deep nightmare. Instinctively, she hugged his hand tightly. Tears kept rolling down from the corners of her eyes. Crystal-clear teardrops fell on the pillow, quickly wetting the pillow. Zi Chen furrowed his brows, feeling a bit worried. He helped her wipe away her tears. Dumpling suddenly woke up. Grandpa clan leader. She sat up abruptly and looked at Zi Chen. Her eyes were full of panic. Zi Chen. Bad news. Grandpa Patriarch is in trouble. Zi Chen hugged her and patted her back. It's nothing. You just had a nightmare. Dumpling shook her head. No. It's real. It's real. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2183. Where's Ayu? I'm going to find Ayu. Dumpling was crying hard. Zi Chen's expression gradually became serious as he looked at her. He carried Dumpling in his arms and comforted her as he walked outside. Dumpling, don't cry. I'll take you to her. Dumpling hugged his neck and leaned over his shoulder. She nodded while sobbing. Her little body was still sobbing. Zi Chen's brows were tightly furrowed as he quickly walked outside. At first, he also thought that Dumpling was having a nightmare, but looking at her behavior, it really didn't seem like it. Could it be that something really happened? Zi Chen carried Dumpling and soon arrived at the city gate. Chu Liyue seemed to sense something and turned around, just in time to see the two of them. What's wrong with you, Dumpling, what's wrong? Seeing Dumpling's red eyes, Chu Liyue's heart immediately ached. Ah, you. Dumpling opened her arms, and Chu Liyue took her into his arms and comforted her. What's wrong? What happened? Chu Luiyue kissed Dumpling gently on the face. Dumpling, don't be afraid. Ah, Yu is here. She looked at Zichen as she asked. Zichen shook his head. In fact, he wasn't sure what exactly happened. Dumpling's eyes were watery. Ah, Yu, something happened to Grandpa Clan leader. Chu Luiyue was shocked. Something happened? What do you mean? Dumpling said. I was sleeping just now when I suddenly felt uncomfortable. After I woke up, I found that the aura that Grandpa Clan leader left in my body was gone. And I can't sense the barrier of Phoenix God Mountain. As Dumpling spoke, sparkling and hot tears kept falling. Boo-hoo, she lay in Chu Luiyue's arms and sobbed. Chu Luiyue's heart sank. Ever since Dumpling went missing last time, Yizhao was afraid that something would happen to her again, so he paid extra attention to this aspect. That aura would not dissipate for no reason. In addition, the most important thing was that Tuanzi couldn't sense the enchantment of the divine Phoenix Mountain. As the young mistress of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, Dumpling, who possessed the purest bloodline, had absolute control over that barrier. Dumpling, be good. Don't cry. Don't be afraid. Why don't you try again and see if you really can't contact him? Chu Luiyue comforted. Dumpling held back her tears and shook her head. Seeing her like this, Chu Luiyue knew that the situation must be bad. I knew something was wrong when Yizhao didn't show up after so long. Mao Zhen's expression was grave. I'm afraid something has happened to Phoenix God Mountain. Chu Luiyue pursed his lips tightly. Phoenix God Mountain was the territory of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Hundreds of Crimson Gold Sky Phoenixes lived there. What exactly happened that made it so difficult for them to resist? We must go to Phoenix God Mountain as soon as possible. Chu Luiyue said. Master, about the meteor sect, Little Hachi said hesitantly. Problems had arisen in both places, but they could only choose one place to go now. Chu Luiyue knitted his brows. At this moment, Rong Xiu's voice was heard. I will personally lead some people to the meteor sect. Chu Luiyue turned around and saw Rong Xiu walking toward them. You will personally go? Rong Xiu nodded. The meteor sect is a first-rate aristocratic family. The problem that forced them to this step is definitely not simple. I have already passed down the order. Yintian Tower will also send some people to go with you. Chu Luiyue felt a little relieved. She handed over the black feather. This is the only clue left behind by the meteor sect's people. Rong Xiu received the black feather. He then looked at Mao Zhen and cupped his hands in greeting. His expression was serious. Rong Xiu has a presumptuous request. I hope that Senior Mao Zhen will agree to it. Mao Zhen seemed to have guessed what he wanted to say. She said, You want me to go with you to the Phoenix God Mountain? Rong Xiu nodded. I know that this matter is a little difficult for you. But don't worry. I will go even if you don't ask. Mao Zhen heaved a long sigh. Her eyebrows also became serious. The relationship between the two ancient mythological beast clans was subtle. However, the other party couldn't stay out of trouble at a critical moment. Rong Xiu felt a little relieved. He walked over and embraced Chu Luiyue. Then, he kissed her forehead. Be careful. Chu Luiyue raised her eyes and looked at him. She nodded lightly. You too. Chu Luiyue and the group quickly ran toward the Phoenix God Mountain. After a period of running, they finally arrived at the sea. Standing on the shore and looking at the sea in the distance, they could vaguely see the undulating mountain peaks. But for some reason, Chu Luiyue felt that something seemed to have changed when she came here previously. The defense here has all disappeared. Just as she was lost in thought, Mao Zhen's words instantly woke her up. That's right. Starting from this sea, all the areas that extended toward the Phoenix God Mountain were actually under the jurisdiction of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. In the past, when they came here, they would feel a strong divine pressure even if they were just standing here. But now, there was nothing. Mao Zhen said in a low voice, "I didn't restrain my aura." Logically, the Phoenix God Mountain should have sensed it. Someone would immediately come out and stop me. But now, a deathly silence ensued. Between heaven and earth, there was only the sound of the wind blowing across the sea. The sound of waves hitting the reefs echoed continuously. Chu Luiyue felt increasingly uneasy. "Dumpling, let's go and take a look." Dumpling nodded with reddened eyes. Then, she waved her hand. Above the sea, a reddish-gold ice bridge quickly formed. Passing through the ice bridge, they quickly arrived in front of the Phoenix God Mountain's barrier. Until now, as the clan leader of the Great Phoenix Dragon Clan, Mao Zhen still did not feel any obstruction. This was enough to explain the problem. Ever since these two divine beast clans were born in ancient times, such a situation had never happened. Dumpling could not care less. She rushed forward and was about to open the barrier. However, that layer of translucent barrier seemed to be frozen and did not move at all. Dumpling suddenly widened her eyes. How can this be? Chu Liuyue's heart sank. Because of the purest bloodline, it was always easy for Tuanzi to control the boundary. She could open and close it whenever she wanted. This was the first time such a situation had happened. She walked forward and covered the barrier with her hand. It was cold to the touch. Soon, a layer of silver frost began to rapidly condense under her palm. Chu Liuyue's heart jumped and she immediately retracted her hand. However, there was already a palm-sized frost mark on the barrier. Looking at the layer of frost, Chu Liuyue's temples suddenly twitched. This was, bang. Before she could figure it out, Tuanzi had already kicked at the boundary. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2184. Bang. A muffled sound could be heard. However, there were no cracks on the barrier other than the rapidly condensing frost. This barrier was extremely sturdy. Even Dumpling's full-powered attack could not break it. Chu Luiyue looked at Mao Zhen. "Senior Mao Zhen, do you have any ideas?" Mao Zhen shook his head. "This barrier is condensed with the bloodline power of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Once I make a move, the situation will only become more troublesome." After all, he was the clan leader of the Great Phoenix Dragon Clan. Chu Luiyue slowly clenched her fists. "In that case, it will be extremely difficult to break this barrier." At this moment, a reddish gold stream of light suddenly flew out from between Dumpling's brows. It was a long feather. Ancestor's golden feather? Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. "Dumpling, why did you summon it?" Under normal circumstances, this ancestor's golden feather would only appear when Dumpling opened her meridians. Chu Luiyue could not be blamed for being too nervous. It was because the previous incident had left a deep impression on her. Every time she thought of Dumpling's hands bound by iron chains and covered in blood, her heart trembled faintly. Dumpling shook her head blankly. "It's not me." The ancestor's golden feather slowly floated forward and landed lightly on the barrier. In an instant, a shocking and vast pressure spread out from within. The frozen enchantment instantly melted. An entrance quickly appeared in front of them. It was the ancestor's golden feather that flew out and opened this barrier. Then, the ancestor's golden feather flew into the barrier, and Dumpling immediately followed. Chu Luiyue and the others followed closely behind and entered the Phoenix God Mountain. The moment they entered, a thick smell of blood drifted out from the air. Chu Luiyue knew that something was wrong and immediately looked up. She was instantly stunned by what she saw. As far as the eye could see, the mountain peak had collapsed, the forest had collapsed, and there were messy bloodstains everywhere. It was clear that they had just gone through an extremely bitter battle. Chu Liuyue's heart tightened as he looked at Dumpling. Dumpling bit her lips tightly and headed straight for the Phoenix Shrine. A bottomless pit appeared in the plaza in front of the Phoenix Shrine. Rocks tumbled down and dust scattered in all directions. The thick smell of blood drifted out from this place. The dark red, dried bloodstains were evidence of everything that had happened here. Grandpa Chief. Dumpling suddenly choked with sobs and shouted, throwing herself into a pile of rocks. She lifted the rocks and pulled out a scarlet gold feather that was stained with blood from the bottom of the pile. Her face and hands were stained with dust and blood, but she couldn't care less about herself. She just held the feather in her hands and cried. Chu Luiyue quickly rushed over. Dumpling. She held Dumpling in her arms and looked at the feather again. The aura on it indeed belonged to Yi Zhao. Chu Luiyue's lips were tightly pursed. Yi Zhao was the chief of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. His strength was extremely tyrannical, and almost no one in the entire Divine Ruins could be his match. Who was it that hurt him? And who destroyed this place to this extent? She took a few steps forward and came to the edge of the deep pit. She looked down. A familiar gloomy aura surged up from below. Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly felt like it was being tightly clenched by something. This aura, it was exactly the same as the hand at the bottom of Lingxiao College's Mountain of Wine and the eye in the Red Moon Desert. An extremely preposterous guess appeared in Chu Luiyue's mind. Perhaps, a part of that person's incomplete divine body was also hidden here. She held her breath. Who would have thought that such a shocking secret was actually hidden under the plaza in front of the Phoenix Shrine? She suddenly turned around and looked at the Phoenix Shrine. Fortunately, the Phoenix Shrine was enveloped by a layer of barrier, and it did not seem to have suffered any damage. Grand, majestic, and solemn. As always. Chu Luiyue carried Dumpling and turned to leave. Mao Zhen hurriedly asked, where are you going? Chu Luiyue said firmly. Fenghuang Valley. Fenghuang Valley was not far from the Phoenix Shrine, and they quickly arrived. A gigantic barrier enveloped the entire area. And within it, one could vaguely see balls of light. Chu Luiyue was very familiar with this. When the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clansmen rested here, they would all enter their own balls of light. When she and Dumpling first came here, it was also like this. But at that time, there were not so many balls of light. But now, as far as the eye could see, there were at least 100. Dumpling looked at the scene in front of her in a daze. At this time, her tears were almost all gone. Are the remaining members of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan all here? Chu Luiyue muttered softly. Dumpling clenched the two feathers in her hands. One was the ancestor's golden feather, and the other was Yi Zhao's feather. Hearing Chu Luiyue's words, Dumpling turned to look at her. They seem to have fallen asleep. Fallen asleep? Yes. Yes, they have fallen asleep. Dumpling used the back of her hand to rub the corners of her eyes. Her voice was still choked with sobs, but it was obvious that she was holding it in. Grandpa clan leader made them fall asleep. Chu Luiyue's brows twitched slightly as she looked at the huge barrier that enveloped the entire Fenghuang Valley. If that's the case, then this barrier was also left behind by Senior Yi Zhao. Tuanzi nodded hard and said, there were also a few grandpa elders who seemed to have helped. There were also a few other people's auras mixed in. Chu Luiyue was even more certain of her conjecture. It seemed that something had happened to the Divine Phoenix Mountain. Yi Zhao had used all his strength to protect the Divine Phoenix Hall and Fenghuang Valley, but he had disappeared with the thing buried under the plaza. Chu Luiyue was certain that Yi Zhao was still alive. Because if Yi Zhao died, Dumpling would automatically inherit the position of clan leader. The Divine Phoenix Hall would definitely sense it. But now, such a situation had not occurred. However, it would be extremely difficult to find Yi Zhao now. The barrier outside the Divine Phoenix Mountain should have been personally created by Senior Yi Zhao. This was the only way to protect the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Dumpling, can you detect where Senior Yi Zhao went? Chu Luiyue asked. Dumpling shook her head. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something and looked up hesitantly. At this moment, the sky was gradually darkening. A silver bridge gradually appeared at the point where the sky met the earth. It extended upwards bit by bit, and was clearly longer than yesterday. Dumpling stared at the bridge. That feeling was getting stronger. Grandpa clan leader, is there? Chu Luiyue frowned. Could it be that Yi Zhao was also in the illusory god palace? On the other side, Rong Xiu was leading Umo and the rest towards the meteor sect. Before they arrived, they saw a ball of fire from afar. The fire that covered the sky seemed to have swallowed everything. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2185. The meteor sect was a first-rate aristocratic family in the divine ruins world. It had been passed down for thousands of years. It had a deep foundation and a huge influence. However, at this moment, the crazily burning sea of fire easily swallowed everything. Rong Xiu's sword-like eyebrows knitted together. At this moment, a group of black-armored soldiers flew over from the direction of the sea of fire. The totem of the Yuntian Tower was engraved on their collars. These people were Rong Xiu's Black Knights. Your Highness. Hundreds of soldiers saluted in unison. Rong Xiu asked, "Where are they?" "Your Highness, I rushed over immediately after receiving your order. However, I was still a step too late. When I arrived here, the fire had already started. Most of the people of the meteor sect had already died. Only 157 people survived. Now, I have arranged for them to stay 100 miles to the southwest." "How are the head of the Shi clan and Shi Royer?" The head of the Shi clan had already perished in order to protect his clansmen. The second miss of the Shi clan is fine now. She is just grieving and unwilling to speak. It would be hard for anyone to accept such a thing. Rong Xiu nodded. "I will go and take a look. You don't have to follow me." The soldiers felt strange. However, they had always respected Rong Xiu's orders. Therefore, they didn't ask or dissuade him. They respectfully complied and waited in place. Although it was dangerous, His Highness's strength was unfathomable. Therefore, they didn't need to worry. Rong Xiu moved and arrived in the sky above the blazing fire. The houses had already been engulfed by the sea of fire. Only their vague outlines were left. The scorching heat caused the temperature of the surrounding air to rise by a lot. Even a river not far away was on the verge of drying up. Every inch of space was suffering from the terrifying heat. It was almost distorted. Rong Xiu looked down. A huge mirror slowly emerged from the endless flames. The flames danced crazily at the edges. However, they seemed to be afraid of the mirror. They didn't dare to approach it. Soon, a figure was reflected in the mirror. It was a face identical to Rong Xiu's. That person was dressed in a black robe and his gaze was deep and profound. Disdainful, cold, and noble. He looked at Rong Xiu and spoke slowly. "You should go back. Patriarch, why don't you sit down and rest for a while?" An old voice came from behind. Shi Rui shook his head and didn't say anything. He was still looking into the distance. This place was over 100 kilometers away, but they could still see the flames that soared into the sky. One could only imagine how bad the situation there had become. And they had just escaped from that hellish place. It used to be her home. Her father had already passed away, and she had accepted the order to officially inherit the position of the head of the family. Ever since she was young, she had always been groomed as the next patriarch. However, she had never imagined that she would stand in this position under such circumstances. Her eyes were red, but not a single tear fell from them. That fire had completely evaporated her tears. She didn't even have the strength to cry now. She was just standing there with the last of her willpower. The old man standing behind her felt sorry for her. After thinking for a while, he couldn't help but persuade her. "Patriarch, you have already done your best. If you hadn't sent that message for help, the people of the Yuntian Tower wouldn't have come. I'm afraid that now." Shi Rui was in a daze. Actually, she didn't have much hope at that time. After all, everything had happened too suddenly. The only thing she could think of at that time was to ask for help from the Peach Blossom Cove. Fortunately, the Yuntian Tower had come in time. Otherwise, the entire meteor sect would have been destroyed. At this moment, a tall figure was rapidly approaching from afar. It was Rong Xiu. Several black-armored soldiers of the Yuntian Tower followed behind him. The people behind Shi Rui stood up one after another. Saint. Shi Rui stepped forward and bowed solemnly. Her voice was choked with sobs. Thank you for saving us, Saint. Rong Xiu said, now that the meteor sect has been destroyed, you can't go back. They will escort you all the way back to the Peach Blossom Cove. You will stay there for the time being. You are Yu's friend. If she wants to save you, I will help you. Shi Rui took a deep breath. The meteor sect will never be able to repay the kindness of the two of you. Rong Xiu nodded. He turned around and was about to leave. Shi Rui was startled. She hastily asked, Saint, aren't you going back to the Peach Blossom Cove with us? Rong Xiu didn't stop walking. I have an important matter to take care of at the Yuntian Tower. I won't go back for the time being. Shi Rui was startled for a moment. Then, she nodded. Rong Xiu was probably worried about the Yuntian Tower since such a thing had happened to the meteor sect. Therefore, it was normal for him to go back. Before she could say anything, Rong Xiu had already left with Umo looking at the figure that quickly disappeared into the distance. Shi Rui felt an inexplicable sense of unease. At this moment, the bridge on the horizon had quietly appeared. Shi Rui slowly clenched her fists. Phoenix God Mountain. After confirming that most of her clansmen had only fallen into a deep sleep, Dumpling's heart finally calmed down a little. It was just that finding Yi Zhao next was a huge problem. I wonder how Elder Yu and the others are doing now. Chu Luiyue looked at Dumpling as she thought of this. Dumpling, are they still at the Phoenix God Mountain? Yes. Dumpling nodded. She pointed at the Phoenix God Palace. Elder Yu and the others seemed to be inside. But what? Tuanzi bit her hand and said uncertainly, I'm sorry. There seems to be one person missing. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. Who's missing? Great Elder. Yi Gong. Chu Luiyue frowned. Yi Gong was already at odds with Dumpling. After Dumpling became the young master, Yi Gong suffered a huge blow and rarely came out. Why did he suddenly disappear now? In the dark and cramped cage, Lan Xiao was leaning against the wall with his legs crossed. His expression was still casual. I say, you're really boring like this. We've already discussed it and even signed a contract. How can you tear it up unilaterally like this? You even locked yours truly and the others up. You don't really think that we'll listen to you just because you're locked up, do you? He sneered and turned over. It's been so long, and you still haven't given up? How childish. Let me give you a piece of advice. I'm very hot-tempered. You can't control me. You'd better hurry up and let me out before I get angry. That low and hoarse voice finally sounded. You guys have already broken the contract by tempering your divine body without permission. If you really want to talk about punishment, you guys should be the first. Lan Xiao chuckled, sat up, and smiled evilly. Not only did I temper my divine body, but that Tianlei was also sent by you, Why? Are you envious? Let me remind you, what she sent over, is a golden heavenly lightning. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2186. Smack. A black whip suddenly flew up and ruthlessly lashed Lan Zhao's face. Dark red blood stains quickly appeared on his handsome and exquisite face. It was a ghastly sight. Lan Xiao reached out and wiped his face with his thumb. When he saw the bloodstain, he cursed under his breath. Damn you! do you know how precious my face is? He had waited for a full 10,000 years for this face to appear. If you continue to resist and struggle in vain, let alone your face, even your divine body will cease to exist. Lan Xiao sneered. Sure. Then why don't you kill me now? On account of our past friendship, if you give me a quick death, I might be grateful to you in the underworld. When you go to the underworld in the future, I might even make things easier for you. Forget it. It's better if you don't dirty my underworld. Disgusting. As he spoke, Lan Xiao lay down again and placed his hands behind his head. He looked like he was waiting for death. However, the voice disappeared and no longer paid any attention to him. After a long while, Lan Xiao scoffed. Of course, he didn't dare to kill him. He didn't dare to kill any of them. However, this kind of life was really not meant for humans. Force flickered in his palm and quickly brushed across his face. That wound healed quickly. He had a divine body, so it was naturally more convenient to deal with it. I'll remember this wound. He gritted his teeth and closed his eyes again. Phoenix God Mountain. Chu Luiyue was thinking about Yi Zhao when he suddenly heard Zi Chen's low and cold voice. Master, look over there. Chu Luiyue heard him and looked in the direction he was pointing. The night was dark. The bridge at the edge of the sky was still extending upwards. In the clouds where the bridge disappeared, there seemed to be a few silver flowing lights flashing. Then, more and more flowing lights surged out and intertwined with each other. They gathered together and gradually formed a huge silhouette. That's, Chu Luiyue squinted his eyes and looked carefully. Then, his pupils constricted. It was a door. It floated quietly in the air, majestic, powerful, and unapproachable. That's the Illusion God Palace's heavenly gate? Zi Chen suddenly realized something and asked in a deep voice. Chu Luiyue didn't say anything. The reason for that was because there were even more rays of light gathering behind the door, forming the outline of a magnificent city. Behind the clouds, the legendary illusory God Palace was faintly discernible. Looks like the gate of heaven is really about to open. Once this commotion was made, it was unknown how many cultivators in the divine ruins world rushed over like ducks. Mao Zhen frowned. This was a huge temptation to all cultivators. Even if they knew that the road ahead was dangerous, they would still proceed without hesitation. What do you plan to do next? He looked at Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue hugged Dumpling tightly and said word by word, to the illusory God Palace. Chu Luiyue and the others left the divine Phoenix Mountain. Fortunately, Dumpling had the ancestors' golden feather, which made it convenient for them to enter and leave freely. After they left, they continued to freeze the barrier. Under such circumstances, this was undoubtedly the best choice. Everything that happened at the divine Phoenix Mountain made Mao Zhen worried about Divine Dragon Island, so he didn't follow Chu Luiyue back to the Peach Blossom Cove. Instead, he returned to Divine Dragon Island. Chu Luiyue sped along. Along the way, he saw many cultivators heading straight for the bridge in the sky. The entire divine ruins seemed to be faintly restless. Chu Luiyue returned to the Peach Blossom Cove as quickly as possible. When he reached the city gate, he ran into Shi Rui and the others. Seeing Chu Luiyue, Shi Rui, who had been holding back for a long time, burst into tears again. However, she forced herself to hold it in, but her eyes were still filled with sadness. Chu Luiyue saw the sorry state of the group and guessed what had happened. She immediately walked over. Greetings, Princess. The Black Knights bowed respectfully. Chu Luiyue nodded and motioned for them to rise. She looked around and realized that Rong Xiu wasn't here. Where's the Holy Sun? She asked. The leader of the soldiers immediately said, Princess, the Holy Sun has something important to attend to, so he returned to the Yuntian Tower. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Did he say when he would be back? His Highness said that he would need some time, but he didn't say when he would be back. Chu Luiyue felt a little strange. Rong Xiu had rushed back. Did something really happen at the Yintian Tower? However, she was afraid that the entire Divine Ruins world would be in chaos, and the Yintian Tower wouldn't be spared either. She put away these thoughts and looked at Roy, come with me. The remaining people of the meteor sect were quickly settled down. Hundreds of Black Knights from the Yuntian Tower were also left behind at the Yu residence, and were responsible for guarding this place. Chu Luiyue brought Roy back and asked her in detail. Unfortunately, Roy didn't know what had happened. I was cultivating at that time, but I suddenly heard the sound of fighting outside. I felt strange, so I went out to take a look. In the end, I saw that the people of the meteor sect were killing each other. There weren't many people in the meteor sect, and they had a good relationship with each other. They didn't have any life or death grudges. Therefore, I felt that something was wrong when I saw this. However, before I could catch those people and ask them about it, a big fire suddenly started in the ancestral hall. The fire spread very quickly, and the entire meteor sect suffered disastrous casualties. We were only able to escape thanks to the Yuntian Tower's Black Knights. Otherwise, Roy couldn't help but feel sorrowful as she recalled everything that had happened before. Chu Luiyue gently patted her hand, but he also knew that this kind of pain could not be comforted by others. She thought for a moment and frowned. Those people probably won't be able to find anything, but how did the fire start in the ancestral hall? Roy shook her head. I don't know. When I rushed over, the sea of fire had already engulfed the entire ancestral hall. I could only vaguely see that the flames seemed to be gushing out from the ground of the ancestral hall. Underground? Chu Luiyue's nerves suddenly tightened. Roy nodded. Seeing her reaction, he couldn't help but be stunned. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Chu Luiyue took a deep breath. I'm afraid there's a big problem. This situation was extremely similar to the situation at the Phoenix God Mountain. She pondered for a moment and said, I plan to go to the illusory God Palace. Roy was shocked. Now? Chu Luiyue nodded and looked at the sky outside. At this moment, the sky was already bright. However, the bridge at the edge of the sky didn't disappear like before. The city had already disappeared, but the gate was still standing in the sky, shining brightly. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath. The illusory God Palace's heavenly gate is about to open. It was waiting for her. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2187. Chu Luiyue called Sun Yi over to discuss the matter of heading to the illusory God Palace together. This subordinate will naturally go with Master. Sun Yi didn't seem surprised by Chu Luiyue's decision. Or rather, from the moment that line of words flashed in the sky, he had already been prepared for it. Peach Blossom Doc can't be left alone. You should stay. Chu Luiyue was halfway through when he saw Sun Yi's expression. He swallowed the rest of his words. Forget it. Come with me. Yes. Who else does Master plan to bring with him to the 13U sect? Chu Luiyue pondered seriously for a moment. Sanson will be in charge of watching over Peach Blossom Dock. Biyao and Yujio will stay behind to watch over the Dao Gate realm. 13 is too young, so he will stay as well. Oh right, there's also Fang. Let him continue to grow vegetables in the Yu residence. In that case, only Hua Shuangshuang and Little Hachi would go with him. Tang Ku and Sir Su's identities are special. I'm afraid it won't be convenient. It's more appropriate to invite Taizu. There were many experts in Peach Blossom Dock, but this trip was dangerous and there were too many uncertainties. Chu Luiyue had to be very careful. After all, from the situation with the Meteor Sect and Phoenix God Mountain, Peach Blossom Dock had to leave enough combat power to prevent any accidents. Sun Yi lowered his eyes slightly. A dark light seemed to flash through his indifferent and narrow eyes. Then, he looked up and asked. Chang Wanzhou. Master, do you want to bring him along? Chu Luiyue was stunned. Little Zhou? Sun Yi nodded. Although he's only a high god now, his strength is not bad and his potential is not small. This might be a rare opportunity for him. Chu Luyue pondered for a moment. You're right. Then let's bring little Zhou along. She had seen little Zhou's combat power. Moreover, he had followed her for a long time. Most of the time, he naturally knew what to do without her saying anything. But, Sun Yi, when did you become so close to little Zhou? Chu Luyue sized up Sun Yi strangely. Based on her understanding of Sun Yi, other than the 13th Yu, he wasn't interested in anything else. Now, he actually took the initiative to mention Xiao Zhou's name. This was extremely rare. Sun Yi's lips twitched as he smiled faintly. He's Master's man. If Master can trust him, then so can I. As long as it was convenient for her master, nothing else mattered. This was indeed the answer Sun Yi gave. Chu Luyue put away those chaotic thoughts. All right, it's settled then. Go inform them. I'll go find Taizu. They set off at night. I'll go with you. Shi Ruier suddenly stood up. Chu Luyue shook his head. You're injured and need to recuperate. Moreover, your status is different now. So, the entire meteor sect still needs to rely on you. Shi Ruier's expression immediately changed when she heard this. She pursed her lips tightly. After a long time, she said, all right. I'll listen to you. If there's anything you need, I and the entire meteor sect will definitely do it. Chu Luyue patted her shoulder lightly before turning around and leaving. Soon, it was night time. That silver bridge was especially bright and resplendent in the night sky. As expected, the silhouette of that city appeared once again. Moreover, it was even clearer than the previous day. Before they set off, Chu Luyue arrived at the Dao realm. Today, Yu Jiao was in charge of guarding this place. She already knew that Chu Luyue and the rest were planning to head to the illusory god palace. Therefore, she felt strange when she saw her here. Master, why are you here? Chu Luyue shook his head. It's nothing. I'm just worried that something might happen to this Dao realm, so I came to take a look. Yu Jiao hugged the wooden sword in her arms and smiled. Don't worry. During this period of time, this Dao realm has been very stable. Although it still can't be passed through, it's much better than before when the situation was getting worse. Chu Luyue walked to the front of the barrier and stared at it. Above the Dao realm, the light flickered and remained calm. She stood there quietly, as if she was waiting for something. She was waiting for the scene from that day to appear again. However, after waiting for a long time, the scene she expected did not appear. That mirror did not appear above the Dao realm, nor did it reflect her figure. Master? Seeing that Chu Luyue stood there for a long time without any reaction, Yu Jiao called out. Chu Luyue came back to her senses. She felt a little regretful. I guess I won't be able to see it today, she exhaled softly and turned to leave. Guard it well. Yes. The night wind was cold. Under the starry sky, Chu Luyue and the others rushed toward the bridge. Chu Luyue originally wanted to go with Rong Xiu, but Rong Xiu had returned to the Yuntian Tower and did not know when he would return. She had Yan Qing pass the message and led the others there first. In fact, the same scene was playing out in the entire Divine Ruins world. Countless cultivators, with all kinds of thoughts, rushed toward the rumored illusory god palace. In the vast sky, there were no stars and no moon. Only the gradually revealed appearance of the huge city attracted everyone's attention. It seemed to have existed here since ancient times. It was incomparably noble and unmoving. And that bridge was the only existence that people could touch. Whether or not they could ascend to the heavens and enter when the heaven gate opened became everyone's hope. The bridge was very far away from them. Even though Chu Luyue and the others traveled at full speed, it took them half a month to reach it. Looking from afar, it was a sea. The silver bridge grew from the sea and extended toward the sky, connecting with the magnificent city. Countless rays of light scattered down. It was brilliant. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2188. At this moment, countless cultivators had gathered on the shore. They all looked up with unconcealable eagerness and anticipation in their eyes. Chu Liuyue's arrival caused a commotion among the crowd. That person from Peach Blossom Dock is here. I heard that Senior Tang Ku and Mr. Su forged nearly 100 venerable divine artifacts together and gave them all to Peach Blossom Dock as gifts. I wonder what kind of scene that is. I've long heard of Sheng Guanyu's fame, but I didn't expect to meet her here. What's so strange about that? The Illusion God Palace's heaven gate is about to open, and countless cultivators are rushing here to enter. She's no exception. But isn't that person from Yintian Tower always with her? Why isn't she here this time? Sheng Guanyu seems to be very confident in herself since she only brought so few people here. However, the Illusory God Palace isn't a place that just anyone can enter. Everyone was discussing. During this period of time, Chu Luyue could be said to be extremely famous in the Divine Ruins world. Thus, everyone was inevitably filled with curiosity and probing about her. Chu Luyue didn't care about the various gazes and voices around her. She focused her gaze in front of her. The bluish-black seawater was churning, and the waves kept crashing against the rocks, splashing water everywhere. What was different from other sea regions was that the seawater here contained an extremely abundant amount of energy. Even though they were just standing on the shore, they could still feel the pressure that was hard to ignore. There was nothing on the surface of the sea other than the silver bridge. There's no sign of life here at all. Sheng Guanjing frowned and said in a low voice. Other than them, this place seemed to be too quiet. Only the sound of the waves kept echoing in their ears. Chu Luyue stared at the mysterious sea and said softly, "The seawater is too rich. The energy in the seawater is too abundant. Naturally, no living creatures will approach it." "Master, what's the reason for that?" Little Hachi blinked and came over curiously. "Isn't it better for cultivation if there's more energy?" Chu Liuyue's lips curled up. "Generally speaking, that's true. However, the prerequisite was that the body had to be able to withstand the irrigation and erosion of these powers. If he couldn't control it, it would only do more harm than good. Previously, in the palace in the Red Moon Desert, such a problem had occurred." "I see." Little Hachi nodded and rested her chin on her hand. "However, this place is indeed very strange. There is so much heaven and earth energy here, but it doesn't spread outwards. It only fills this place. It's as if there's an invisible barrier that's sealing everything." Chu Luyue looked at the silver bridge thoughtfully. Right at this moment, the sound of a bell suddenly came from the sky. Boom! The distant and boundless sound of the bell reverberated throughout the world. Everyone's heart trembled. "The gate of heaven is opening." Someone in the crowd shouted, but it was not difficult to hear the suppressed excitement in the voice. "Do we have to cross that bridge?" "Then we'll have to cross this sea first and reach that bridge. This sea is a little strange. Won't it be dangerous?" "If it's dangerous, we'll just have to be careful. We can't possibly give up eating for fear of choking and just watch, right?" Although they knew that the road ahead was dangerous, it could not erase the yearning in their hearts. "This old man will go first." A black-robed elder stroked his beard and took the lead. Chu Luyue glanced at him. She did not recognize that elder, but from his aura, there was no doubt that he was a venerable god expert. At a time like this, a venerable god expert would indeed be more confident. Everyone focused their gazes on him. The black-robed elder came to the shore and waved his hand, setting up a crimson barrier around him. Then, with a tap of his foot, he quickly headed toward the silver bridge in the center of the sea. Wherever he passed, ripples would appear on the surface of the sea. Then, everyone saw that the elder's speed had clearly slowed down. The rich heaven and earth energy was like a swamp, slowing down his pace. The black-robed elder was shocked. He felt as if a mountain was pressing down on him, so heavy that he almost could not breathe. He quickly circulated the origin power in his body, barely keeping his body from falling. Even so, he was still slowed down by a lot. He was only halfway there, but the energy in his body was already exhausted at an alarming rate. When he finally arrived in front of the silver bridge, his forehead was already covered in sweat. Only when he stepped onto the silver bridge did he feel the pressure on his body instantly lessen. Phew, he let out a long breath and stood there for a long while before recovering. When he looked back, he still felt some lingering fear. If he had been a little later, he really might not have been able to hold on and would have fallen into the sea. He looked at the people standing on the shore and said with lingering fear, "I'm afraid that only venerable gods can barely pass through the sea. Those below venerable gods should just give up." Everyone looked at each other when they heard that. Many of those who came here were venerable gods, but the proportion of high gods was definitely not small either. How could the high gods here be willing to give up just because of this? Is he just trying to fool us? We're just flying over this sea. How can he be so exaggerated? That's right. This distance isn't that far. Why is it that only venerable gods can pass through? Isn't that a little too exaggerated? But he doesn't look like he's lying. No matter what, we shouldn't believe anyone's words at a time like this, okay? For a moment, there were differing opinions. Rather than saying that they did not believe the black-robed elder, it was more accurate to say that they were unwilling to give up just like that. They had gone through so much trouble to get here. How could they just leave after listening to someone else's words? Seeing everyone's reaction, the black-robed elder felt stifled and waved his sleeves. That's all I have to say. Believe it or not, it's up to you. You're courting death. If anything happens later, don't blame me for not warning you. Many people hesitated for a while, but in the end, they still chose to go forward. If we go together, we might be able to support each other. Perhaps we can pass through smoothly. That makes sense. Then we'll just follow behind them. A few moments later, Chu Luiyue saw 3 people holding hands as they walked forward. Of these 3, one was a venerable god while the other 2 were high gods. All of them looked rather young. It was no wonder they were so arrogant. The 3 of them walked forward smugly, but they soon realized how serious the situation was. Layers upon layers of pressure were surging in from all sides, almost crushing them. The energy in their bodies was rapidly being consumed, but even so, they found it difficult to move forward. When they were 1/3 of the way through, one of them couldn't hold on any longer and fell into the sea. Splash! Wonderful book house. Chapter 2189. That person fell into the water and disappeared into the sea. The 2 people above looked down and were about to try to retrieve that person when suddenly, their eyes widened in shock. The body of the person who had just fallen had already been minced into pieces by the astonishing power in the sea. A smear of blood slowly spread, and the thick smell of blood rushed into their nostrils. The remaining pieces of flesh and blood rushed to the surface of the sea and were quickly drowned by the waves. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. From beginning to end, that person did not even have time to call for help before he was completely swallowed and died. Seeing this scene, everyone felt a chill run down their backs. This sea, plop. Another person could not hold on and fell. This time, only the god was left in the group of 3 in the blink of an eye. However, his current situation was not optimistic. The 2 people beside him fell one after another and died in front of his eyes, which was a huge blow to him. He was dazed for a moment, took a deep breath, and coughed because of the thick smell of blood. This finally made him come back to his senses, and he quickly fled without thinking. He ran madly in the direction of the silver bridge. The origin power in his body burned wildly, and his face was pale and his whole body was in pain. However, he could not care about anything else at this time. He only knew that he could rush forward as fast as he could. Finally, before he ran out of energy, he arrived at the silver bridge. As soon as he stepped on it, his body went weak and he staggered, almost falling to the ground. The black-robed elder who came first saw this and frowned. "Now, you still don't believe this old man's words?" Everyone fell silent. They had all seen the tragic scene just now. It was already difficult for a god to cross by himself, let alone bring others. However, if that was the case, wouldn't many of them really have to stop here? The gate of heaven is about to open, and everyone wants to go to the illusory god palace, but it's not that easy. The strong are respected, and if you don't have enough strength, you're just courting death. The black-robed elder's words were like a bucket of cold water poured over everyone's heads. Although it was unpleasant to hear, it was the truth. Those two gods were quite strong, but what happened in the end? All of them fell into the sea and were completely annihilated. Not even a complete corpse was left behind. Could it be that only venerables can enter the illusory god palace? Someone muttered in a low voice. His voice was filled with disappointment and defeat. Sheng Guanjing looked at Chu Luiyue and asked hesitantly, "Little you, what do you think we should do now?" There were a total of 6 of them. He, Chu Luiyue, and Sun Yi were all honored gods. The remaining 3 were only high gods. Chu Luiyue said, "Let's go together." Together? Sheng Guanjing frowned. She had clearly seen the situation just now. It was impossible for her not to know how dangerous it was to do so. But she was still so insistent. "Little girl, you, why don't you think about it again? The road ahead is dangerous. If we advance recklessly, I'm afraid." "Taizu, don't worry. I know what to do. I won't gamble with Shuang and the others' lives." Chu Liuyue's voice was very soft, but her tone was very firm. Many people around them heard their conversation and turned to look at them. They looked at Chu Luiyue as if they were looking at a stubborn lunatic. What did Sheng Guanjing just say? All of them? Did she make a mistake? Half of them are only high gods. I've heard that she's very bold. Now that I've met her today, she really lives up to her reputation. Where did she get her confidence from? I'd like to see how she's going to bring those people over safely. There was no lack of people in the crowd who wanted to see a joke. Seeing Chu Liuyue's insistence, Sheng Guanjing could only agree. Then, be careful. Chu Luiyue nodded. She tapped the tip of her foot lightly, and her slender and delicate figure instantly flew up and landed on the surface of the sea. Boundless pressure instantly surged in from all directions, enveloping her completely. Almost at the same time, turbulent force surged out of Chu Liuyue's dantian and filled every yuan meridian around her. A layer of beautiful soft armor covered her body and flickered with a faint glow. The two forces inside and outside her body clashed with each other and instantly cancelled out a lot of the pressure. Moreover, she had summoned her godly body, which greatly reduced the impact on her body. After a series of actions, she easily resolved the problem of the terrifying pressure around her. The only troublesome thing was that it consumed a terrifying amount of force. However, coincidentally, this was what she lacked the most. Chu Luiyue continuously urged the force in her body to surge out. To others, this place might be extremely dangerous, but to her, it was really nothing. Shuang. Chu Luiyue turned around and shouted at the people who were still standing on the shore. Hua Shuang reacted quickly and immediately responded. Before he finished speaking, he was already charging toward Chu Luiyue. Like the others before him, he slowed down the moment he stepped onto the sea. At this moment, a silver-red flowing light surged out from Chu Liuyue's body and drew a brilliant rainbow under the dark sky. Divine territory? Seeing this scene, the two venerated gods standing on the silver bridge could not help but exclaim in shock. The two of them looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Others might not know, but the two of them knew best. On the surface of the sea, the pressure was heavy. It was already extremely difficult to pass through, let alone anything else. In any case, the two of them had been completely suppressed earlier and could not summon their own divine territories. However, Chu Luiyue seemed to be very relaxed. The silver-red divine territory surged like a river and reached Hua Shuangshuang in the blink of an eye. With this divine territory, Hua Shuangshuang's movements became much more convenient. His figure flashed, and he quickly moved forward along the god domain. Chu Luiyue's divine territory covered almost half of the sea. Hua Shuangshuang did not take long to reach the silver bridge from the shore. Finally, with a leap, he landed firmly on the silver bridge. Everyone was dumbfounded by what they saw. Is this possible? Is this possible? Little Hachi! Chu Luiyue shouted again. Little Hachi tucked her hair behind her ears and walked forward, twisting her slender waist. As she walked, she waved her hand at the person who had made sarcastic remarks just now and chuckled. Just now, you said that you wanted to see what our master would do, right? Now, you have to watch carefully. After all, this is an opportunity that you can only watch. As she spoke, she flew up and followed Hua Shuangshuang's path. It did not take much effort for her to reach Hua Shuangshuang's side. Oh, it's so crowded here. Little Hachi covered her mouth and smiled. I'll have to trouble the two seniors to move over there. There are still quite a few people behind us. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2190. The eyes of the two venerable gods who were the first to arrive twitched. Why do these words sound so infuriating? However, little Hachi was enchanting and beautiful, and she smiled sweetly. They could not throw a tantrum at a young lady, so they could only walk stiffly to the side. Thank you, seniors. Little Hachi's smile deepened as she yawned. Hey, second brother, don't you think it's boring? Hua Shuangshuang knew that she had always been the most vengeful. She must have been angered by those people's mockery just now, so she deliberately angered them. He gently knocked little Hachi's forehead. You've been spoiled by your master. Little Hachi snorted. Hua Shuangshuang continued to comfort her. Why don't we guess who can come over? Isn't this a little interesting? Little Eighth was instantly energized and nudged him with his elbow. His brows relaxed as he smiled. Second brother, I haven't seen you in a few years, but you haven't changed at all. Yes, I still like to watch shows like before. But I like it too. Look at those people's expressions. It's really exciting. Just now, they were all waiting to add insult to injury, but now, they're all stunned on the spot and can't say a word, right? There aren't many opportunities to slap people in the face, so I have to seize it. Hua Shuangshuang said seriously. I'm also worried that everyone can't come over. After all, it's not easy to come here, right? If we can only watch others pass by, wouldn't it be very uncomfortable? The two of them echoed each other, making the group of people so angry that their faces turned green. However, the truth was right in front of them. Chu Luiyue had indeed sent them all over easily. Even if they wanted to refute, they could not find anything to say. Amidst the strange silence, Chang Wanzhou quickly arrived. Finally, Cin Yi and Sheng Wanjing arrived. After they arrived at the silver bridge, Chu Luiyue moved his wrist and planned to put away the god realm. At that moment, a voice suddenly came from the crowd. Master Yu, wait. Chu Luiyue turned around. The person who spoke was a middle-aged man. Master Yu, we have a presumptuous request. Since it's a presumptuous request, there's no need to say it. Chu Luiyue interrupted the other party and quickly put away his divine territory. With a single step, he arrived on the silver bridge. Everyone was speechless. The middle-aged man's face instantly turned into the color of a pig's liver. He was extremely embarrassed. However, he still refused to give up. He gritted his teeth and continued. Master Yu. We just want to ask you for a favor. As long as you can help us cross this sea, we will reward you handsomely. Chu Luiyue looked at him strangely. Heavy reward? How heavy is it? The man choked instantly. In the Divine Ruins world, who didn't know that Chu Luiyue was rich? There was a large group of divine beasts, a large pile of venerable divine artifacts, and all kinds of precious heavenly treasures. What did she lack? What could possibly catch her eye? Perhaps it was because he was questioned by Chu Luiyue in front of so many people. The man felt a little embarrassed. His expression became a little unsightly. To Master Yu, this is just a piece of cake. Even so, Master Yu is still unwilling to help. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment before he chuckled softly. Little Hachi blinked and said coquettishly, Master, so there really is such a shameless person in this world? He's not related to me at all, yet he has the cheek to ask me for help like this? TSK, what a big face. Most importantly, he's very ugly. That's even uglier. The man's expression instantly turned even uglier. You. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2191. Let's not talk about whether this is a piece of cake for me. Even if it is, it has nothing to do with you, does it? Little Hachi and the others are my people, so of course I have to take them with me. As for you, if you're willing to return to Peach Blossom Cove and call me a master for the rest of your life, I can consider it. Chu Luiyue said slowly. These words were like a resounding slap to the man's face. Shengguan Yu. Don't go overboard. If you don't want to help, just say so. What's the point of insulting me like that? Chu Luiyue was surprised. I thought I made myself very clear, but you didn't understand. But you don't seem to understand, so I can only be more straightforward. In the end, he was the one who brought this humiliation upon himself. Who else could he blame? The man's expression changed. He was furious. Fine. If you're so capable, wait until the divine gate opens. Let's see if you can still have the last laugh. Chu Luiyue looked away lazily. You don't have to worry about that. If you have the time and energy, you'd better think about how to get over. That one sentence finally blocked the rest of the man's words. As for the others present, they looked at each other and secretly exchanged glances. Chu Luiyue was clearly not going to help, so they had to think of another way. That was normal. Everyone was here to compete with each other. It was good enough that they could take care of their own people. Who would want to help others for no reason? Chu Luiyue could easily bring her subordinates over because she had the ability. What right did others have to ask her to help? After a brief silence, the remaining people finally tried to cross the sea and reach the Silver Bridge. Her Eminence was able to make it, but none of the great gods were able to make it over safely. Although there was only a difference of one word between the two, there was a huge gap between their strengths. It was like a natural chasm that was difficult to cross. After another 7 great gods died in the sea, the remaining great gods finally gave up. In the end, only 23 high deities made it onto the bridge. The middle-aged man who wanted Chu Luiyue's help was among them, but the rest of the people who came with him stayed on the shore. Including Chu Luiyue and the others who had arrived earlier, there were a total of 31 people. Among these people, Hua Shuangshuang and the other 2 were the only high gods. In this way, the 3 of them became rather special existences. However, under the protection of Chu Luiyue and the others, the remaining people could not express anything. The middle-aged man stared at Chu Luiyue with a cold look in his eyes. Little Hachi moved closer to Chu Luiyue and said in a low voice, Master, I think that person already hates us. I'm afraid that he will think of ways to make things difficult for us. Chu Luiyue shook his head. Ignore him. She had always been sharp, so she naturally sensed the other party's hostility. However, she did not take this seriously. If she was worried about this, she would not have acted like that just now. She did not take the initiative to cause trouble, but she was also not afraid of trouble. Little Hachi saw that she was staring at the silver bridge under her feet with great concentration. She also tilted her head and looked at it a few times, but unfortunately, she did not see anything. Master, what's so interesting about this bridge? Have you been looking at it since you came up? Chu Luiyue said. Look at the patterns on it. Patterns? Little Adie's brows furrowed slightly. She saw that there were only some flickering light spots on it, but there were no patterns. Chu Luiyue bent down, stretched out a finger, and lightly tapped on one of the light spots. Bang! A slight cracking sound could be heard. The palm-sized light spots suddenly spread out, and light scattered in all directions. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into a small Xian formation. The pattern was complicated and dazzling. Most importantly, this was a great Xian Emperor Master-level Xian formation. Chu Luiyue's pupils shrank. She had already felt that there was something wrong with this light spot, but she did not expect that such an inconspicuous little light spot was actually a Xian formation of this level. After a moment, that Xian formation closed up again, and the light scattered, returning to that blurry light spot. It did not seem to be a threat at all. If they did not see it with their own eyes, no one would believe what had just happened. Just now, that was a great Xian Emperor Master-level Xian formation. When Chu Luiyue moved, the people at the side were more or less paying attention to her, so they all saw the scene. At that moment, everyone was shocked. Chu Luiyue stood up and looked forward. At this moment, they were standing at the bottom of this silver bridge. Going up, countless light spots gathered, condensing into this peculiar bridge. The light spots flickered, and there were almost countless of them. If these were all Xian formations, Chu Luiyue held her breath. She originally thought that the flowing cloud flying diagram, which had accumulated over 1,000 Xian formations, was already an extremely powerful existence. However, at this moment, compared to this silver bridge that extended from the sea to the sky, it was simply a small magician in the presence of a great magician. No, it could even be said that there was no comparison at all. It was hard to imagine what kind of shocking scene it would be if all these light spots bloomed at the same time and all the Xian formations operated at the same time. No wonder this place has such astonishing heaven and earth energy, Chu Luiyue muttered softly. The black-robed elder who was the first to arrive let out a long sigh. So many Xian formations gathered to form a bridge that leads to the sky. I really wonder what kind of existence the illusory god palace at the end of the bridge is. Actually, this was also what everyone was thinking. Just this bridge alone was already incomparably shocking. As for that mysterious illusory god palace, it was probably even more. Dong. Another sound of the bell rang out. Some people could no longer hold back and walked up. Once one person took the lead, the rest would quickly follow. Everyone walked up the bridge one after another, heading straight for the door in the sky. Chu Luiyue was about to walk forward when she suddenly caught a glimpse of Chang Wanzhou from the corner of her eyes. His brows were tightly knitted, and his expression seemed to be somewhat painful. "Little Zhou, what's wrong?" Chu Luiyue asked. Chang Wanzhou raised his head and looked over, shaking his head. "I'm fine. It's just that just now I felt a little dizzy." Chu Luiyue's brows slightly furrowed. "Is it serious?" This didn't seem to be the first time this had happened. Recently, Chang Wanzhou seemed to be prone to headaches and dizziness. This had almost never happened before. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but feel a little worried. Chang Wanzhou pursed his lips. "I'm fine." Chu Luiyue helped him take his pulse and found that his body was indeed normal. "Maybe it's because I haven't rested well recently." Chang Wanzhou retracted his hand. "These few days, I've been having some messy dreams." Chu Luiyue nodded. "If you feel uncomfortable, feel free to tell me." Chang Wanzhou responded. At this moment, they were already at the back. The people in front had already walked some distance. Chu Luiyue raised his chin. "Let's go. Wonderful book house." Chapter 2192. Dong. Another bell chime was heard. It was getting closer and closer to the opening of the gate of heaven. At first, there were still some whispers in the crowd, but the closer they got, the more tense the atmosphere became. They gradually quieted down. Finally, everyone moved forward in silence. Only the excitement and anticipation in their eyes showed that they were not as calm as they looked. Chu Luiyue moved forward step by step. She could clearly hear the sound of her heart beating, and the blood in her body seemed to be flowing faster. Blood was gurgling under her eardrums. She faintly felt that something was about to rush out from her dantian. But every time she wanted to observe it carefully, that inexplicable throbbing would disappear. This made the whole process extremely long. Every once in a while, the bell would ring. Dong! The 10th bell. Sheng Guanjing said in a low voice. At this moment, they were only a short distance away from the gate. Chu Luiyue nodded lightly. She had a feeling that perhaps, when the 12th bell rang, the gate of heaven would open. There were already people in front of the gate and stopped. When the 11th bell rang, Chu Luiyue and the others also came to the gate. She stood behind the crowd and looked at the gate in front of her. This gate was extremely tall, and people standing here seemed extremely small. Countless streams of light intertwined, outlining its outline, but its specific appearance could not be seen clearly. A thin layer of clouds covered it, and no one could see through it. However, the crowd was able to clearly sense that heavy and imposing aura. This reminded Chu Luiyue of the palace in the Red Moon Desert. She wondered what it had to do with the illusory god palace. After a long wait, the 12th bell finally rang. Dong! This bell was heavy and distant, and it spread far and wide between heaven and earth. Then, the gate finally opened slowly. Creak! Everyone's spirits were lifted as they focused their gazes on that direction. Brilliant golden light shone, almost blinding them. Chu Luiyue tilted her head and narrowed her eyes. After a while, the light gradually dissipated. A man in his 30s, dressed in a gray robe, walked out of the door. As soon as he appeared, Chu Luiyue's heart trembled. This man's aura was extremely strong. He was much stronger than all the primordial gods she had seen before. He was probably only one step away from the rumored threshold. She glanced quickly at the man again. He had a tall and straight figure and a handsome face. There was a faint arrogance in his eyes. He stood in front of the door, his scrutinizing and imposing gaze sweeping across everyone. He spoke in a low voice, and his voice was clear yet carried an indescribable pressure. The Mirage God Palace's heavenly gate opens once every 10,000 years to recruit the best cultivators in the world to ascend to the heavens and break through the gods. You are the first batch to arrive at the opening of the heavenly gate. It can be seen that your aptitudes are not bad. Everyone was excited, but they still held their breaths in concentration, not daring to slack off in the slightest. I am Jianghu Lai, the 7th divine envoy of the illusory god palace. I am in charge of leading you into the illusory god palace. You will follow the order and enter the book one by one. Saying so, he raised his hand, and a thick book appeared in his palm. Then, he opened the book, and his other hand flashed with light, summoning a crimson gold feather pen. When she saw the feather in his hand, Chu Luiyue's heart tensed up. That was the feather of the crimson gold heavenly phoenix. Ah, you. I want to go out. Ah, you. Tuanzi also sensed the breath and immediately wanted to come out. Chu Luiyue comforted her in her mind, Dumpling, don't worry, wait until we enter the heavenly gate. It won't be too late to check then. There can't be any mistakes right now. Hearing her say that, Dumpling finally calmed down. Then you must take a good look and see if that is Grandpa Patriarch's feather. Chu Luiyue nodded without batting an eyelid. Luckily, this small disturbance didn't attract that person's attention. The people standing in front had already started to step forward. Name. Jianghu Lai held the book in one hand and a pen in the other, asking in a deep voice. Song Qing. The first to step forward was the black-robed elder who was the first to step on the silver bridge. Even though he had seen many storms, he still couldn't hide his excitement at this moment. Jianghu Lai raised her hand and used the crimson gold feather to gently sweep it between Song Qing's eyebrows. Song Qing felt as if there was an eye that was looking at him from the inside out. The force in his body surged, and a pattern appeared between his eyebrows. That was the totem of his bloodline power. Jin Yunlai nodded and wrote his name on the book. Pass. Next. Song Qing was originally a bit nervous, but he didn't think that he would pass the inspection so smoothly. He was happy and immediately responded. Thank you, Divine Envoy Jin. In the Illusion God Palace, the title of Divine Envoy is the highest honor. There is no need to use a name. You can just call me the 7th Divine Envoy. Jin Yunlai said indifferently. Song Qing's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly bowed. Yes. Seeing that Jin Yunlai wasn't angry, he relaxed and stepped through the heaven gate. When the crowd saw this scene, they were all extremely envious. The second person tried his best to restrain his excitement and walked forward. The process was the same as before. After he reported his name, Jin Yunlai swept the feather between his eyebrows again. Pass. Next. There were a total of 31 people who came here, and Jin Yunlai's inspection speed was extremely fast. Soon, more than half of them had gone through. Soon, it was the middle-aged man who asked Chu Luiyue for help but was rejected. With a face full of eagerness, he bowed his head and said respectfully, "This one is Cheng Pei, greetings to the 7th Divine Envoy. This one has admired the Illusion God Palace for a long time. Today, don't talk so much nonsense." Jin Yunlai's face showed some impatience, and her voice carried a warning. In the Illusion God Palace, strength is everything. Everything else is false, understand? Many of the onlookers looked at him with ridicule. He wanted to flatter, but he hit the nail on the head. Don't you know where you are? Cheng Pei's face turned pale. Only then did he realize what a stupid thing he had done. He quickly said, I understand. Jin Yunlai swept the feather between his eyebrows and said coldly. Pass. Next. Cheng Pei walked over with his legs shaking. It took him a while to recover. Soon, everyone was finished with the inspection, and only 6 people, including Chu Luiyue, were left. Sheng Wanjing followed him and passed smoothly. Chu Luiyue walked forward. Sheng Wanyu. Jin Yunlai glanced at her and raised her eyebrows. You become a supreme god at such a young age. Thank you for the compliment, 7th Divine Envoy. Chu Luiyue replied in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Jin Yunlai nodded in satisfaction, then swept the feather between Chu Luiyue's eyebrows. Then, his face turned serious. Chu Luiyue's eyebrows were as smooth as before. There was no sign of a totem. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.